Oh, yeah, you're looking at me. I'm looking right back at you. Welcome on in the BCX, the Brian Campbell experience on this Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. It's a holiday, folks, right? Not just Thanksgiving Eve. How about Valley New Year? That's what we used to call it, the best local bar night of the year. But welcome on in just the same to Campbell's Rambles, my opportunity once a week to speak in circles, your opportunity, I guess, to get your questions answered, continue to build community on this side of the earth. And, well, I guess we can, regardless of what side of the earth you come on, we could all connect here virtually. And thanks for joining me. Thanks for populating the channel. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And hopefully, whether you're set to celebrate Thanksgiving in America or it's just another week in November for you somewhere else around the world, hope you're doing well. I'll be the captain for this ship, the old BBC with that BDE. Yes, one half of the fantastic, former award-winning, greatest combat sports podcast ever, Morning Combat. And a quick reminder, today, Wednesday, we recorded what will go down on Black Friday. It'll be our PFL preview, our mailbag episode as Morning Combat returns on Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube. So if you are done putting somebody in a headlock at Kmart over a big screen, over a flat screen, and you want to hang out before the PFL championships begin, the main card, 1 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN Plus on Friday, tune into MK. Hey, Al Drum, right back friggin' at you. Unsure how long we're going to do today. Don't know how many of you out there are free and available at this time. Look, back in my single days, I mean, not only is Thanksgiving already the greatest holiday because of the 4 F's, right? Food, family, football, and friends, right? But, you add that fourth one, friends, and you go out the night before in your gross hometown and run into everybody that you used to go to high school with. I mean, I don't do that anymore at 46, but, Valley New Year used to be a thing. That used to be the best and craziest night of the year, leading into Thanksgiving. I mean, not everybody grows up like I did in Connecticut, where Thanksgiving football is, the final game of the regular season, often the league championship. And if you come from a dirt hole industry town like myself, Naugatuck, Connecticut, then you've got one team you're looking at, and that's Ansonia, and they must go down. All right. But whether you are into that side of it or just looking to slice a turkey leg and say hi to grandma, hope you're doing well out there. It's been a time. November was a rough month for me mentally, unscheduled, right? It was a confluence of major events that sort of all came together and really seemed to put baby in the corner, so to speak, and challenge me. I don't know where you guys are in your similar mental health walks and journeys, but we always take it serious. We always do what we have to do to survive that storm and come out smiling on the other end. I'm happy to report that's where I'm at right now. But I would like, November to be behind us. What a weird November, by the way, not to talk in circles and talk about the weather with you, but up here in the northeast of the U.S., mild temperatures like crazy. So it's normally you're expecting snow at this time. Haven't received that yet, but really excited about Thanksgiving because it is about pure things. You don't have to give gifts. It's about just reconnecting, being thankful, being grateful. I can relate to that. I can relate to that in a big way. So, yeah, sometimes the anxieties, the depressions of life, they do put you, let's hear perfect speller dropping in my household. We celebrate Riyadh season, not the holiday. Yeah, it's a different kind of turkey, right? So shout out to Alalshikh. I'll get to him in a second. No, I'm not not pulling an aioli here, but shout out to him just the same. But look, the anxiety and depression, especially around the holiday season, especially as the cold weather's coming in, it can really kick us in that behind. And like I mentioned, it certainly had for me, but simplified my life, removed some apps from my phone, removed the distractions, tried to focus more on what truly matters, tried to focus more on, evolving, getting back up to speed and getting ahead. And here we are. Here I am. I'm still standing. All right. Hopefully you are doing the same. Life will throw you some curveballs. You can't be like Pedro Serrano, though. You got to be able to adjust and hit that curveball. All right. You know what I'm saying, Joe Boo? All right, I got a couple topics to get into with you off the start. Then we will open it up to your questions. Super chat is open. It's an optional feature that you can support the cause and help out your boy BC. But really, this is about me. It's about you. It's about us. I mean, look at us, right? Look at us. My first topic off the top. So I just flew in from LA and boy, are my arms tired. Sorry. So I just got off the red eye this morning from Los Angeles. It was a late assignment that came on the bat phone. And I was suddenly yesterday, Tuesday, in Beverly Hills hosting the Ryan Garcia versus Rukia Anpu exhibition special boxing match that's going to go down December 30th here in the US, but it's obviously going to emanate from Saitama, Japan, the Saitama Super Arena, and of course part of what Ryzen and Saki Kabara have done, which is make that New Year's Eve celebration in Japan a combat sports showcase, a full day multi-event event, if you will. And how about FanMio pay-per-view teaming up with Ryzen? Ryzen, right? I love Ryzen. I mean, I'm at the podium introducing the legend Saka Kabara to the people and having him speak. Fantastic tuxedo he was wearing, by the way. But wow, the real Saul coming in. Yeah, like the video, please, guys. Doesn't cost you anything, okay? Subscribe to the channel, whether you enjoy getting weird notifications of videos you didn't think you needed to see or not. It's out there for you. But I got to say this. When I heard about the fight, like a lot of people, Ryan Garcia against a Japanese kickboxer, I'm like, is this just some way to circumvent, make some money while Ryan is still suspended, which he is until April of next year from the failed drug test, the fallout of that victory later turned no contest against Devin Haney. But I came around, not just because I received a check to host that fine press conference and come around, but this is going to be an interesting night at the fight. So quick backstory. It's Ryan Garcia wanting to stay busy, wanting to get back in there. But, you know, I don't follow K1 kickboxing on the regular. I didn't know much about Rukia Anpo outside of, oh, isn't that the guy that Manny Pacquiao boxed for 3 rounds in July in Japan in an exhibition that looked very much like a real fight? And everyone's saying coming out, like, Pacquiao got handled. He got bodied. And, you know, watch the videotape. He did. So it's interesting that Ryan Garcia was in the crowd in July when he was doing that sort of world tour that he was on. And he got in the ring afterwards and challenged Anpo. And here we are. It's going to be a 153-pound catchweight fight. It's going to be 8 2-minute rounds, but it's going to be in the Mecca, you know, where Pride once held it down there in Saitama. And it's going to be a part of that New Year's Eve celebration. This is going to be an interesting fight. I didn't know what to expect from either man with the translation, of course, at this press event. But if you saw it, if you checked it out, Anpo is a wild man coming with the ripped abs, no shirt, jacket over it, and just acting like the badass that he portrays himself to be. He had a speech in English that he read off of paper that just dunked on Ryan Garcia. And then at the end of that, calling him unprofessional for missing weight against Haney, throwing some slander at him. Anpo curled up the piece of paper, threw it at him from about a foot away, and dropped a couple F-bombs, some FUs on him. I expected standing 1 foot away, like most people, that it was going to be on, but it was an interesting Ryan Garcia on this day. He was very much in control and command of his feelings, which is great to see after what has been such a wild, recent 12 months for him, all over the place, 12 months for him. And, you know, his parents were there and his mom, who had a successful surgery and is fighting cancer, and his dad, Henry, as well, his brother. But it was a Ryan I hadn't seen in a long time. You may have saw him on the Ariel Helwani show, which happened right before Ryan came out. There were many moments where Anpo tried to push his buttons. They had a face-off at the end where Anpo kind of slapped Ryan and put his hands in his face a few times, and Ryan was laughing, very chill, very, you know, doing the Tank Davis head movement thing that Tank previously had done to Ryan ahead of their big super fight. I didn't think I'd care about this fight at all, but it's an exhibition, yes, but it's going to be an actual fight, and it's going to be interesting to see what Ryan does against the bigger opponent, the kickboxer turned boxer. Obviously, you're going to favor Ryan in big ways, but there's going to be that size difference. What is this fight going to look like? I'm kind of getting involved. I'm kind of interested in seeing this after being so close to it. Now, for the record, Ryan said he told Ariel that he did speak with the state commissions in the U.S. You know, obviously he has that ban in the state of New York. and he was cleared to do this exhibition. The biggest problem, of course, will be the fallout of what's going on with Golden Boy. Ryan's a Golden Boy fighter, but this is not a Golden Boy promoted event. It's a cross promotion between FanMio, which of course gave us Mayweather, Paul, Diaz versus Masvidal, and the legendary Rizin Fighting Federation and Saka Kabara. You did see that tweet from Oscar De La Hoya that said he was going to shut down the fight, and and Ryan didn't get the sign off from Oscar that was needed. It seems, listening to the FanMio side and Ryan's side, that that's not the case. And maybe, we saw some reporting from Brunch Boxing that it's more of a dispute about the amount of money that Oscar and Golden Boy is going to get to essentially step aside for this exhibition. But Ryan feels like he's legally in the right. So we'll see what happens. But it's supposed to go down December 30th, 9 p.m. Eastern time in the States. So a day before New Year's Eve here for U.S. fans, New Year's Eve in actual Japan. But it'll be good to see Ryan back. He's talking about when it comes to actually returning to the ring when he's eligible again in April. He's talking about all the names you would hope he is, everywhere from 140 pounds to 154, from Boots to Teofimo to Haney to a Tank rematch to Jake Paul. So here's what's interesting. I didn't think coming out of Tyson versus Paul and the absurdities that were linked to that fight, and good God, they actually put out a press release saying, no, the fight wasn't fixed, which is wild that they would even go to that route. But I guess the buildup in the Zapruder film of the slowdown of the tape of Mike pulling punches and, Jake obviously not going for the finish or going for the ending ruffled people's feathers from an entertainment standpoint, from a betting standpoint. So maybe that was damage control. I didn't think I'd be interested in talking about future Jake Paul fights. But when you hear Ryan Garcia say, I'm going to get back, my heroes, the old guys, I'm going to get back Anpo, knock him out for going ham on Manny Pacquiao. And Anpo did. He was the bigger fighter. And surprisingly, he hurt Manny and kind of bodied him in that fight. And now he's saying, I'm going to avenge the Mike situation and go after Jake. Now that's interesting. It's not Jake doing what a lot of people wish he would, which is finally fight somebody his size, his age, his experience level, and literally, actually try to climb the ladder of contention at cruiserweight. This is, instead of getting a novice MMA older fighter, you're getting a prime boxer who's smaller and younger, but still very dangerous. To hear Ryan say he's willing to box Jake at a 185-pound catch weight and assumes his speed, his power, even in moving up that much, will easily handle Jake. I'm wondering if they have something there. I'm wondering if that's a potential Netflix fight, if that's a potential just sort of so weird, but also a real fight with whatever rules they would end up with in terms of the amount of rounds and where they would meet at a catch weight. That's interesting because we're only talking about ultimately Jake fighting big celebrities that aren't boxers. I don't really think we've really thought of him necessarily fighting somebody who's smaller, but in their prime. And what does that actually look like? It's something to think about. Obviously, these are all sort of left lane fights for Ryan. We all want him to be in the main space in boxing, and I think he ultimately will. And the one thing you can say about Ryan, love him or hate him, and he's given you a lot of reasons for the latter at different times. He's a gamer from the standpoint of wanting to, he's promoted by Oscar, and he's kind of already building a bit of an Oscar-like resume, different circumstances, different everything. But what is Ryan trying to do with the successive fights of Tank Davis when his promoters and his network didn't want him to, and then going right into the Haney fight? He had the Duarte fight in between, but ultimately this is Ryan trying to make the biggest and best fights possible. That's an Oscar De La Hoya type legacy so far. I support that. So we'll see where this Garcia Anpo fight goes. Interesting stuff. I didn't expect Anpo to be that aggressive. If you remember the work I did for FanMio on the Diaz Masvidal press tour, it was like pulling teeth to get those two guys to talk trash. And here we had Anpo, with skits and bits and jumping all over him. Ryan, though, is confirmed and composed. I don't know if this is a temporary fix. I don't know if Ryan's truly been in therapy and is on the meds and is, really trying to take his mental health seriously. But I was, I guess, impressed would be the word. Basically, in comparison to my expectations of who Ryan was going to be showing up for this event, he was poised, ready to sell the fight, and growingly, annoyed at what Anpo was trying to do. So we'll see that. We'll see what happens there if you're interested in that December 30th. But I love LA. We love it, right, Randy Newman? Yeah, so it was good to get a little 48 hours or so. Had to, sleep on the plane on the red eye. 4 screaming babies around me, the smell of diapers. I mean, it was a challenge, you know what I mean? It was a challenge, but this is, shout out to Boston Scally for hooking me up with this beautiful hat that makes me look both younger and older than I actually am. It was a challenge that this old body went through, and I came through the other side. So fired up for the holidays here for Turkey. And speaking of Turkey, let's talk Turkey. Alalshikh, what he's got going for February 22nd, not fully announced. But we had heard Eddie Hearn say that this February 22nd Riyadh season card that's going to take place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, is going to be the deepest and most impressive Riyadh season card to date. We're a year plus into the Turkey movement, into Saudi Arabia as a nation pouring unprecedented amount of money into this. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know what the true plans for 2025 are for Turkey and buying Ring Magazine and maybe joining forces with Dana White. You do hear Dana now going back to if something happens, the deal is going to be signed in January and February, and you all will find out. Is that teaming up? I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. But for Turki Alalshikh to come back February 22nd, Saudi Arabia, with this proposed card that's been reported by people like Dan Rafael, and there's been some counter reporting saying, hey, of the fights that have been leaked or announced, not all of those are going to happen on this card. One or more of those big names could be off or moved somewhere else. We're also hearing other fights can be added. But for the 5 or 6 fights that we think we're getting here, I know that DAZN, Turkey, and the various players on that side of the street have already tried to tell us a few times over that this was the biggest, deepest, best card in history. And each time it wasn't. There's been some deep cards since Turkey's come around. And some of them on paper would have been tremendous, like the August 3rd one in LA this year. But a couple fights fell off. The Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu fight fell off, and that would have been a big one. But what they have proposed here is truly the deepest pay-per-view potentially I've ever seen in boxing. That's including the Don King 90s, super loaded ones that would have Tyson, Chavez Sr., Christy Martin on them. You know what I mean? Like, Don King used to go after it and really give you those UFC style deep pay-per-view main cards. I've been encouraged by what PBC has done, even though the Amazon era for PBC hasn't been spectacular. At least they've put out pay-per-views we needed to see, and they've been kind of loaded, sometimes with just star power and lopsided matchups, sometimes like what is supposed to be coming up here February 1st on the Benavidez Morel card, some like real offerings like Figueroa versus Fulton 2. But what Turkey's got going on, Alan W., shout out to you, brother. The Reg is around here. We filmed MK this morning, and the Reg was a part of it. Believe that. Luke Thomas dropping F-bombs on him. I mean, come on. This cat's a legend. But back to Turki Alalshikh. So it looks like they're proposing Daniel Dubois, I think in the main event, although it doesn't make the fullest sense, but Daniel Dubois not rematching Anthony Joshua, but defending his IBF title against Joseph Parker, the former title holder who's red hot of late. Those wins over Jean Gelé, the wins over, he's on a run, 2 or 3 or 4 big ones in a row of late. Parker's resurgent. That's a very interesting fight. But you're telling me the co-main might be better BF Bivol too? Like, you could just stop talking right there. But no, there's more. Boots Ennis going up to 154 to take on unbeaten Virgil Ortiz Jr., fresh off of Virgil having a fight of the year contender back in August was it, against Sergey Boachuk? And by the way, on the BCX, if you care, I hope you do. Sergey Boachuk, the fantastically exciting 154-pound contender from Ukraine. I had a chat with him. His English is good. He's hilarious. He called out everybody. You got to check that out. Those 3 fights alone, each of them would headline their own pay-per-view. And you're going to add into there, on paper, it seems, Jean Gelé coming back against the guy, begins with a K, last name. It's slipping my head at the moment. But a heavyweight who's been on Riyadh season cards and making some noise. It's an interesting matchup. There was another matchup on there. Carlos Adames defending his middleweight title against Hamza Shiraz. That's a very interesting matchup. And even if one of those bouts fell off, you're hearing rumors that a replacement, or maybe just sprinkled on top, could also be Shakur Stevenson, not against William Zepeda, who's now claiming an arm injury coming off of that closer than expected fight against Tevin Farmer. but Kid Austin, unbeaten Floyd Schofield, who's told Oscar De La Hoya, like, make this fight. I'm ready for the smoke now. This is whatever it's going to look like when they officially announce it. February 22nd is a circle of the calendar. Put on the big boy pants, red panty night. Like, we don't see this in boxing. And I know it's going to probably have to happen in the afternoon, other side of the world, but it's kind of a deal that we're increasingly being okay with when we get fights or fight cards like this. I don't even want to comment on the depth of this card until we find out officially what it is, how deep it is, but this is encouraging stuff. There'd be a lot of money being spent on one action-packed card top to bottom with fights that truly matter. I don't know how to respond to that because I don't know how to experience that in this sport. It's interesting. It's a check back into the give thanks, it's Thanksgiving season, into the other turkey. I like the regular turkey decently. I always say turkey's a little bit overrated, even though it's the centerpiece of Thanksgiving. And if you were French Canadian like myself, you'd be getting to that tortillere, that meat pie, as the real center of your Thanksgiving plate. But the other turkey, not the other white meat, the other turkey, doing good stuff lately, Turkey Alalshikh. It always comes with a price tag, this experience. I don't know what the Ring Magazine thing is going to look like. I don't know anything about what 2025 is going to look like outside of the idea that a lot's going to change, and it's going to change fast. But if this is what we're looking at for this year already, February 1st, Morel Benavidez, yes. This one, February 22nd. Rumors of Tank Davis coming back on March 1st against Roach. Rumors of Errol Spence finally, potentially, fighting Sebastian Fundora for 2 154-pound world titles in a separate pay-per-view card. Things are coming together, so I'm thankful for that. For that turkey. The other turkey, though, I don't know how you get down, but I don't get how people don't realize that this Thanksgiving meal that a lot of you are about to have tomorrow, I mean, it is the best meal. It's the most comforting meal. It's the only meal where the sides are the stars, the superstars. I mean, you eat too much turkey, you're going to get tired. You're going to end up unbuttoning that top button, Al Bundy style, and watching the Lions game and falling asleep after 2 slices of chocolate cream pie. But, if you make meat pie the center of that, and you got to line the sides around the meat pie in the middle, so it's just this volcano that eventually, implodes upon itself. That's a real man's Thanksgiving plate. You got to have the cheap cranberry sauce. You don't want the trendy kind with the clumps in it and the berries. No, we're going cheap on that. You can even go cheap on the mashed. Even in some ways, the cheaper the mashed potatoes, the better they taste. But you better get the good corn. You better have great gravy, and maybe have an old lady in your family who makes it herself. And, you got to have a good mix of those second tier side options. Are you a green bean casserole person? Are you a, I used to be down with turnip when I was a kid. I was big fan of that. I don't eat that much today, but that used to take up a spot on my Thanksgiving plate. You got to have some rolls. You got to really go after it. What's your favorite drink to pair with that? I like a big ass glass of milk with that comfort meal on Thanksgiving Day. All right. So, I'm excited for this year. I have loved, even though I do still see some family on the holidays, post-COVID, we're just living different worlds, different lives. We're a lot more insulated and shut in. And, it's optional, I think, post-COVID to attend anything, from a funeral to a wedding to your best friend's party. I mean, we just actively go, it felt good the last 4 years to do nothing, so I'm going to keep doing that. But maybe because I come from a huge family, I didn't experience this a lot. I've really enjoyed the post-COVID, quiet, intimate, just me and my family holidays. It's been wonderful. Who would have thought, It doesn't mean I don't love the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the family parties, the grab bag games. I love all that stuff. But post-COVID, I'm an insulated man, for better or worse, probably worse, but I think you are too, It changed the way we lived, changed the way we ate, changed the way we treat each other, right? You see, the old way, well, I thought it was working just fine. But Tupac lyrics notwithstanding, those are my sort of lead-off topics. Take care of yourselves. If you're going out drinking tonight, don't drive. Don't drive. Thank you. That's my editorial for you. Call an Uber, call a friend, walk home, whatever you got to do. But What a holiday. What a time. All right, let's get into it. Let's transition. Let's get into your questions. Whatever you want to talk about, present it to the BC. Put it out there in the chat. We got Mikey. We got what we need here. Super chat is open, so I'm giving thanks back to you already. Let's have community. Let's have some fun. All right. All right, here we go. Let's go. Max Payne jumping in. Thank you, Max. I'm thankful for BC. Hey, wow, right back at you, bro. First time I ever heard him was a nice summer afternoon in 2019, the day MK started. Do you remember that? The Monday after the International Fight Week card, July 2019. Been a fan of BC ever since. Humor and art. A Frank Zappa of combat sports coverage. Thank you. I can aggressively get down with that comparison. Thank you very much. A true genius artiste in Frank Zappa, who is one of those artists that I, when people say, hey man, you got to get into it. I know I got to get into Zappa, but I got to do it the right way. I got to take my time. I got to wait till I'm really ready to carve out time, because Zappa's another thing altogether. Prolific doesn't begin to describe it, right? The complexities of the music and the mixture of the humor to balance that out in between. It's unlike anything else. But when I'm ready, I will attack there. But I've heard people, what is Kurt Emhoff of the great boxing podcast call me, but combat sports is I forgot what word he uses. Profit, I'll take those type of comparisons. Those people, if my role and identity is just to get people excited about fights at the end of the day, I'll accept that. But Max, thanks you for the shout out. It's interesting to see how many people have come here directly from MK to the BCX, or people that are coming out of the woodworker and like, hey, BC, I was day one MK, or I was back in your boxing chats on ESPN 10 years ago, or I was a Making the Rounds fan on ESPN, or a BC and Rafe fan at different iterations. Appreciate you guys staying with me, following me across my career. One love there. Don't need the hat to say that, but one love. It's a midlife crisis hat. Just ultimately the same. All right, let's hear from some real ones here. Where's Tacoma Aroma? You were on here. There he is. Wow. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for sliding in. Happy Thanksgiving back to you and yours, Tacoma. He says, thanks for all the content you've given us this year. You've been killing it. I've been trying. Thank you. I didn't expect this channel to get launched in the manner that it did. But shout out to Luke, my wife, Mikey, for pushing me. I still don't know what it is, but I'm having fun doing it. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for following my work, Tacoma, from MK to this to whatever I got going on in broadcast. Appreciate you just the same. We're building a core team here of people that seem to care about this rambling. Okay, so let's keep it up. Let's have fun. Let's keep it going. All right. You know how much I love Saul. Let's hear from Saul. This guy's Louisville's finest. I thought he was from Chicago. Wasn't. Thought, little Anthony was Saul. He wasn't either, but shout out to little Anthony and V. The real Saul sliding in and saying MK all day. Can I recommend a quick song? Yes, please, Saul. A song that reminds me of you in your youth as you described yourself. Let me write this down. Cookies by MF Doom. I recommend reading the lyrics. So I'm a huge lyric guy. Above really anything else. That's a lot of ways on songs that I look for the true center and the true meaning to begin with. So I'll check that out. Appreciate the recommendation. You do have to protect, I've heard that joke or that saying a few times, those musical shamans in your life, the people that feel like they can speak into you with direct music recommendations, interpretations for you. You do have to covet and protect those people. I've had a lot of them, from my dad to my Uncle Dave to Aaron Bronstetter is a great musical shaman in my life right now. Enoch from Nice Price Records over there in Raleigh, North Carolina. Big fan of that guy too. Big fan of all you guys, but I'll take this recommendation seriously. Thanks for reaching out there, Saul. Hope you're doing well up, in the truck these days. You had a fantastic vacation across Europe. I saw the pictures. It was great. So hopefully, I always want to say, hopefully your outfit is more diverse than I think it is, but I think you only wear MK shirts, and I think that's pretty badass. So continue to support us, but don't support us. That merch site, it's not working right now. It's a little disappointing. There's a longer story attached to it. But Morning Combat MK, we will have a new merch setup in 2025. Things have changed, but we used to joke, like, is anyone there at the cash register? Turns out there wasn't lately. So apologies for that. But we got plans in the work there. Eventually, I'm going to get around to getting some BCX merch going. I mean, Mr. October needs his own t-shirt, right? We'll get on that. We'll get there. All right. Yeah, Alan W. Once again, appreciate that, Reggie. Reggie, show up here. Show up here. All right. We'll see. We'll see if he does. Reggie, I just got back from a multi-day trip. Reggie usually likes to act like, he needs to give me a day to get used to things before he's ready to just invade my personal space on a full-time level, which is really his MO in life. But let's hear from Donnie. Let's get after it here. Thoughts on great question, Donnie. And first of all, thank you for supporting the chat here in this channel that we do in the rambling that's happening. Thoughts on Beatles solo work. Who is the most worth deep diving? I stumbled into a deeper cut by Lennon called You Are Here and love it. I don't know that song, by the way, off the top. Let's get into it. The Beatles solo careers are a real vast, eclectic mix that allows you to take that incredibly prolific 8-year stretch of them taking over the pop charts and changing genres at will and music along with it. And the solo careers are a nice extension of that, except for the fact that as great as these solo careers are, and particularly, of course, Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison, there's no disrespect to Ringo and his all-star band. And Ringo's, probably the most active today, still out there touring like crazy, and he had a few hit singles here and there. But, I'm really talking about those three. They're amazing on their own. But yes, in a lot of ways, each one reminds you what you're missing, particularly Paul and John, without having the other one there, right? Without having, it's like some people say about Morning Combat or about Mike and the Mad Dog. It's like separate. I mean, I shouldn't say this now because you guys are watching me separate right now, but it's like separate. Are they okay? Do they have their quirks and their strengths and their weaknesses? Yes. But together, man, they are certainly magic. The Lennon McCartney songwriting duo was that. Paul and John in particular might have solo careers deep and strong enough at times that you can certainly make the case of Hall of Fame dumb for them on a solo level too. Yet George probably had the strongest single work without question in the 3 LP All Things Must Pass, his kind of official debut in 1970 after the breakup of the Beatles. He had some experimental albums before that really didn't make a lot of sense. And it was obvious that there was especially when we watched this documentary on the Peacock, or was it Disney Plus, the one, behind the scenes of the recording of Let It Be, you really see at that point how much George was starting to grow into the true songwriter that he was, the great songwriter, and wasn't getting the support in the band at the time, as Paul had almost full control in a lot of ways of the direction and the production, although they did bring back George Martin for Abbey Road. John was, I think that was his heroin era. Creatively, he was, sprinkle on an idea, but not a driving force anymore. And maybe that's that angst, that anger, that chip on the shoulder really led George to put his best foot forward with a really unnecessarily long record. And it's hard to really call that a 3 LP in reality, because the third one is an odd set of instrumental jams involving him and Eric Clapton and members of the Delaney and Bonnie band and friends, and the whole group that eventually became, for one album, Derek and the Dominoes there. And, it hasn't aged well. There's some charm in there, but really that's a double album of at least of fresh new material. And that's the best album of all 4 of these guys solo, All Things Must Pass. If you haven't heard that, you got to hear it right now. I mean, it is the best one. It's really one of the most chill, like I'm on an airplane and I want to fall asleep, let me put on All Things Must Pass, or, you know what I mean? Like one of those type of companions. It's just so calm yet deep and emotional and wonderful. But who has the best solo career of the 4 in terms of body of work, level of quality, the totality of it? I think it's John Lennon. And I was always a Paul guy in my Beatle fandom. Okay, George guy, number 1. I'm a George guy in my Beatle fandom. Number 1, George. I wore George Harrison cartoon socks to my senior prom. Like, why? I don't know. Because I was a George super fan. But in the Lennon versus McCartney, the sweet and overly simple pop-tastic sounds of McCartney against the more rebellious, raw sounds of Lennon, I came up more of a McCartney guy. Maybe you can understand that due to my personality. But it's like McCartney's solo run, whether with Wings or before that, and it's really all the same thing to me in reality. It's hard. It's good stuff. There's some really good albums. I mean, I love the self-titled McCartney album. Ram, his second LP, is arguably, rock's first taste of what would become indie rock decades later. I mean, it's charming and quirky and brilliant. And there's some good records after that. Band on the Run, he also, to give Paul credit, had some, we give Bob Dylan for Time Out of Mind in 97 and the albums that followed it so much credit for resurgency, but Paul had some really resurgent solo albums at times in the 80s in particular. But there's this part of the solo Paul experience that is almost too cornball-y, that is almost too sunny pop to the point of being, it's like the same tracks that off of like White Album or whatever that you like and they're charming, but they can grow a little annoying. That's Paul's solo career. I love Martha, My Dear, right? You know what I mean? But like, I don't, it's like, it's not my favorite Beatles song, John's solo work I find over the years has been the most surprising, that I keep unlocking new sections of his solo career that I wasn't, fully aware of or didn't realize the genius of. And you can feel that. See, the biggest thing about Paul's career with Wings is you can feel the gap of not having John's cynicism and sort of, in a ways, almost his darkness to complement the sunny side of Paul. It was too sunny. John's solo career, you can feel the void of not having Paul there, but it doesn't stick with you. And there's some really good albums. I know John, really the first few right off the gate after the breakup of the Beatles was his calling card, Imagine and the like, some of those early albums are 5 stars and they're great. But I love who he kind of became over the years, the Mind Games album. My favorite album, Walls and Bridges by John Lennon. I mean, that is such a kind of cool, almost soup of different genres put together and different ideas and John just stretching out a bit, as an artist. And then, the tragedy that he would die after the comeback, which was Double Fantasy. And you can also say that the album itself is both tragedy and triumph at the same time, because it's a John and Yoko album, and the Yoko songs, boy, do those not hold up well. But the John songs on that record are amazing. And it comes after the, that 5-year time away to raise his son and to get away from the music industry. And you began to realize that he had so much more to say, and, to see him get killed right after that record, it's heartbreaking. The John penned and sung songs on Double Fantasy are some of his best work ever. And it has to be added in as like the bookend to his, to the idea that he had the strongest solo career. George could never equal All Things Must Pass. His other albums are redeeming. I mean, the comeback with Cloud 9 in the 80s, it was good, but there was a quality that John held up, which is weird because his tail run with the Beatles was his most inconsistent by far as a consistent songwriting force. He was more of an ideas guy, more of a, let me add this layer, this filter over what Paul was trying to do here, or this, word in the chorus, or why don't we come back with this middle eight? There's a lot of those moments where John just adds that thing that the song was missing. But I think the heroin use, the political crossover stances he was taking, and the focus that he was taking off of the music certainly hurt him there. When he got solo, he put that back together, and I think really made some interesting stuff, redeeming stuff. So it's all a little bit like, man, if only they could have kept it together. It's wild to me. And obviously there's time and place of why a Beatles reunion didn't happen. John was killed in 1980, so you never really got that. Although, you could have had some bastardized version of a reunion with like his son, Julian Lennon, playing that part, and people would have probably been fine with it. And I know we got a little bit of a reunion of sorts when the 3 surviving members in the late 90s came together for the big, what do they call those? The box set that they put out, the documentary, the book. It was, it was a big sort of anthology. And they came out with 2 new songs that were left on the cutting room table that they finished. And I guess that's kind of a mini reunion, but it's wild that, they had a 10-year gap when they were the biggest. They were the biggest band in the world, and they broke up, and there was a 10-year gap. And I know they almost had that reunion on Saturday Night Live when a lot of money was offered, but it's crazy that they never did one time. Never got to, I mean, and bands did that in the 70s at times, to their detriment, when the Byrds got together in the early 70s and tried to pool all the old talent and reignite something. The issue became that most guys didn't want to bring their best songs to the table for those reunions because they were thinking, well, if this doesn't work out, I got to go back to my solo career. It would have been interesting with how much music changed in the 70s if enough time had healed and passed and these four had come together one more time, especially in the late 70s with how actively rock was changing in pop at that time to, a more corporate and yacht rock sound, but also the implementation of disco, also the really acceptance of jazz fusion at that time. And there was a lot of parts to the pop craft of the moment that would have been interesting to see, but we never got it. So we're just left with that incredible 8-year run of the Beatles on top and a career of solo albums, which you kind of must own, but they're also not going to change your life for the most part. I just think John had the bigger songs in terms of, anthems, in terms of that kind of stuff solo, and the more redeeming, enduring, critically commendable albums solo across the board. You will unlock stuff in the Paul setting that you don't know is there or didn't think was going to be there, but it's not as rewarding as John in that regard. George, I almost wish George in the 70s, once the quality of his solo work started to come back down to life from the launch of All Things Must Pass and how much it just took over. And it's so brilliant. I mean, his steel guitar work on that album alone is insane to go back and listen to. But I'd always wished that he would have caught on with another supergroup. The 1970s was the decade of supergroups, and a lot of them, we don't even talk about them because they failed, and you forget about them until you get into vinyl collecting, and then you're like, wait, so two members of Mountain teamed up with Jack Bruce from Cream to make a super band I never heard of? Yeah, they did. Now I got the records to prove it. I'm surprised George didn't pool his talent. I mean, eventually did with the Traveling Wilburys, which is exactly what I'm talking about here, which is that didn't come until the late 80s. But good question. Produced a 25-minute answer. Let's keep it going here on Thanksgiving and have some fun here. Dave coming in. Appreciate you, Dave. You're feeling thankful. Thank them. Yeah. Appreciate you, Luke, and degenerate Long Island Luke for getting us through the week. Keep killing it. Dave, thank you for your positive contribution. I was telling this to Shaquille Majori. He had me today on, Shaq. Shaq MMA, right? MK guy, CBS Sports guy. He had me on his solo channel this week, and we were talking about MK's 2024. It hasn't been easy coming to terms with the reality. The things we thought were going to happen, we're told were going to happen. They didn't happen. How did we adjust? How did we bite down? Well, it was you guys as an audience that kept us afloat. But there's been some nice breakthroughs. Long Island Luke, who was like, I don't want to say he was just a dude back then, but he was a guy we liked that worked, for Malka and was a part of our Jersey City shows. But to see this guy step into a bigger role the way he has and own it like that, it's been great to see. So appreciate that you guys appreciate that. And this is a new era for MK. And it took me this year, maybe when summer became fall this year, of finally going like, okay, I'm going to stop waiting around for it to become what it used to be, because I don't think it is anymore. And I need to embrace what it is. And I think once I did that, and maybe Luke did that in his own timeline, in his own way, the same, I think we're coming together and doing some really good work of late. So just like, I've had cups of coffee at different great franchises in the past. I had a run on the Great Cheap Heat Pro Wrestling podcast of ESPN and Peter Rosenberg fame, when the great David Shoemaker originally left. And it was a short and spectacular run, but it always gave me pride when people would say years later, like, hey, BC, man, that Cheap Heat stretch you were on was my favorite. And that's, and I hope, and Luke poo-poos this idea, but I hope, like I say a lot, that one day people will look back and be like, man, in 2024, they didn't realize it, but they brought it. So that's what I'm focusing on. Thank you guys for, keeping us afloat just the same. It's been a wild year. I mean, this business will kick you right in the nuts, right? Over and over again. It's been a weird year, but we persevere. You got to take the fight on. You got to keep getting back up. That's what we're doing here. There we go. Let's hear from Alan W once more. Thank you, brother. Reggie would F Luke up. Yeah, Reggie would scratch the crap out of Luke's retina. You're damn right. Reggie would make Luke take a Cotto knee quickly and tap out. There's no question about that. I mean, Reggie just lives his life under his own code. He doesn't give a damn. And and at first I used to resent that. And then at some point I just respect it. I'm like, this creature just thinks the world is his. You know what I mean? Twism, right? Didn't Shaq used to say that? Didn't Shaq used to have a tattoo that said that? That's the way Reggie Jackson lives his life. But that kid, when the cameras are off, when people aren't talking about him anymore, and it's just time to chill, that guy's, he's right here. You're my boy, Blue. Reggie, you're my guy. You know what I mean? I'm proclaiming it. I'm Reggie's guy. All right. That's the truth. That's where it's at. Lazy bed sliding in. Who's your favorite American Idol? And why is it Clay Aiken? Well, it's not Clay Aiken, and I certainly haven't watched that show since its initial boom. Do you remember that? Like, I try to tell that to my kid. One of my sons watches Survivor on CBS, great product, with my wife and I. And I try to explain to him that, like, when this show launched, it was like literally the biggest thing that ever happened to television for like a year. I remember like buying the People magazines, profiling all the people in the first season as if we were going to, talk about this 50 years later in the same, and obviously, like, if anything, that first Survivor Series season really on a US level, maybe as the most successful early reality show, kind of, really helped kick that door open, even though it's kind of part game show, but also kind of part reality show. But you do forget, like, that was appointment must see. Let's go to a bar, let's have a party and watch this crazy experiment. American Idol was that. I'll never forget being at bars on weeknights when American Idol was on, like, first or second season. And like, I mean, people, this was their life. So, I got involved or caught up to a certain degree. But I don't think I have necessarily love for any of those winners necessarily, or redeem them a lot. Who was the first? Was it Kelly? What's her name? From the Wayfair commercials. Shout out to Kelly Clarkson, I guess. No, they all annoy me. It's not Clay Aiken, but yeah. There you go. That's all I got for you, lazy bed. I mean, there's the guy that looks like Jay Leno. By the way, what the heck's really going on with Jay Leno? What's really happening here? This is one of the weirdest stories I've really ever seen, where Jay Leno, who's worth 400 million, Tonight Show fame, and has 1 million old cars and is one of the richest entertainers in the world, is staying at like the equivalent of a Best Western, like 40 miles outside of his comedy show, and falls down a hill on the way to get fast food by the edge of a highway, and has like half of his face and body, like, grotesquely black and blued, and then is like shamefully interviewed on the scene when he goes right from there to the show the next night, and is interviewed by like Current Affair or whatever the equivalent of that is today. And it's like, is that like a mafia hit? Is that like an Illuminati fraternity hazing? I mean, what is happening here? And then they're like, oh yeah, well, don't forget about the time that he did something similar 2 years ago. And what about 2 years before that when his hands blew up or something? I mean, there's some interesting, weird stuff going on here. I mean, I used to be I was more of a conspiracy theorist back when it was more fun to be one, when it was edgy, when it was cool. Now, now people are conspiracy theorists by default nowadays, and it's getting a little, the water is getting urinated in, and it doesn't feel so good anymore. But I can get down with a hot conspiracy at any point. That's an interesting one. All right, let's keep this show going here. All right. Jfish 500 sliding in. BC, are you a fan of yacht rock as a subgenre, and your favorite artist, band, and album? It's a great question. I think the timing of the question is fantastic because Max, the Max app, HBO Max, whatever we're calling it these days, is coming out very soon with a yacht rock documentary that I believe is centered around artists like Michael McDonald, who is, in so many ways a key pillar or face of this genre. So growing up, being raised in a lot of ways by classic rock radio, and then being lied to in so many more ways by classic rock radio in terms of like, what are a lot of these artists really about and how good is their repertoire? Oh, I only know them by that one corny song on the radio. And I will say that I came up aggressively disliking yacht rock. Maybe that's because I preferred a much faster, harder, hipper, edgier sound at that time. The Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, right? You're not going to compare that to that. And I really put it under a genre that isn't necessarily yacht rock, but it's a contemporary of, which is what we call corporate rock. And I like some corporate rock bands, but corporate rock in general is like taking kind of a wimpy sound, selling it as rock and putting it in front of arenas, like Journey, and it's like, I mean, I got a few Journey records. Journey had, like Fleetwood Mac in a different way at its peak is, amazing. But I lumped all that into the same pot of like, yeah, that's like 40-year-old guy rock music. You know what I mean? That's like somebody's dad's music. Well, then what happens when you become somebody's dad and you really start to appreciate, all kinds of music in the 1970s? See, when I was coming up in my teens and 20s, I was confirmed and believed that, music had peaked in the popular music had peaked in the late 1960s. It held a renaissance through the first half of the 70s. Think again, Prime, Stones, Zeppelin, but that it had quickly petered out and, went through disco, yacht rock, corporate rock in the late 70s, and then just went into weird places in the 80s that, yes, we've grown to love and have quirks and appreciation for, from new wave to what have you, anything. But I looked at great music as essentially ending in the mid 70s and not really coming back again on a consistent level to grunge in the mid 90s. But when that sort of thinking really narrows your scope and forces you to miss out on key eras of that decade, the mid to late 1970s. And the combination of appreciating more that era for different reasons, getting into vinyl at the aggressiveness that I have, and then becoming that same age, becoming that old dad, or just becoming somebody more reflective and calmer in their life. Then you realize, oh, not all yacht rock is BS. Not all yacht rock is the kind of music that brings down your testosterone count, every note. No, there's actually a lot of redemption in there, a lot of brilliance in there. It is what it is aggressively, though, obviously. But I think when I got Sirius XM for the first time, when we upgraded the vehicle maybe 5 years ago, that was one of my early takeaways. For fun, you had the Yacht Rock channel, and then you're like, damn, there's some bangers here, right? And then it's like my favorite record store in East Windsor, Connecticut. Shout out to Seabugs. They got a whole yacht rock section, a whole room of yacht rock. And it does become hard of what truly is yacht rock and what isn't. But J-Fish 500, I've grown to really appreciate it because there are some really skilled bands that, whether it should be or not, sometimes their work crosses over into yacht rock. And it might be cheating to say, well, man, I love Steely Dan and I really appreciate them. So if they're yacht rock at times, then I love yacht rock. But they're one of the bands that do that. The Michael McDonald era Doobie Brothers, which is probably not for everybody, but if you really focus on the brilliance of how tight that band already was, and then McDonald comes in with the soul and adjusting with the times of the late 70s sonically, and just the Minute by Minute album is just it's just amazing. That is the top end in a lot of ways of yacht rock. It's not all just Christopher Cross, although to be fair, the first Christopher Cross record, which is the only one you should ever own of his, it really does hold up. You know what I mean? It really does. I mean, that is like pinnacle of yacht rock. But anything involving Michael McDonald to me is top shelf yacht rock. If you're going to allow me to put Boz Scaggs in yacht rock, which also is more of a jazzy pop bluesish crossover at times, then I'm going to take that. I mean, my records are set up. I've got a yacht rock shelf over there that has Boz Scaggs. It probably has a lot of bands that don't even belong there, but they're similar in my mind, like America. I thought America was, cheesy radio hits that I liked in the beginning, but had, overheard them too much. And then you buy their albums and you go through and you're like, damn, this band was something pretty awesome at one point. Similar thing with Boz Scaggs, similar thing with Seals and Crofts. Fantastic albums. I mean, so yeah, those are the kind of like ones where I think on the surface I would have dismissed those bands long ago. But if you're gonna go extreme on yacht rock, like Air Supply, some of Styx, I'm not gonna follow you there. I'm not gonna go there. You know, you got to draw a line. It gets too puffy. It gets too low T. There's no question about it. But when you're at this age where you're aggressively seeking out peace on the regular, sometimes yacht rock in a eighth row seat can really just put you in the, you know, the state of mind to succeed. So thank you for that question there. All right, let's keep it going here. Let's hear from Morning Wombat. Which promotion in boxing do you think put on the best shows to watch from home? Let's talk about this calendar year. 2023 obviously was a dominant year for PBC. The threat of Showtime Sports going away forced all hands on deck to kind of just come together and make the biggest fights possible. And it was like everybody was teaming up to sort of save the farm. And it should have been saved in terms of the success they had, but it wasn't in Paramount's financial vision. And it's an ever-changing business. Obviously, it's hard to see what PBC became in 24, although they had some big moments. Is there promise for a new year? Are they heading in the wrong direction? Gosh, I hope they're not. I hope they're going in the right direction. We'll see them come out big early. But this calendar year has been different. The Saudi money has fueled a lot of it. Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions has had like this incredible year kind of under the radar. We talk so often about who they don't have on their roster these days and the lack of depth, yet they've used their depth with fun matchmaking to put on some very good cards. I mean, I think you have to consider Golden Boy in that mix for promoter of the year. I also think nobody rides the waves like Top Rank. Now, it helps where PBC's kind of having this off year, and it's not like Top Rank right now is at their most well-armed full power in a long time. I mean, they just lost Shakur. Loma might retire. Bud Crawford left before that. Teo's kind of flaky, but yet look who's coming up. Look who's next. And then you realize what this professional operation is. Week two, it's like sometimes it's not just who puts on the best cards. To me, sometimes it's who's the most consistent. There's a consistency with Top Rank that I really like and really respect and enjoy. And, you know, the ESPN connection with them broadcasting wise, there's some hit or miss elements at times with it. But for the most part, I like that broadcast. I like, there's less theatrics with Joe Tess out. And I like Bernardo Osuna and pairing him with Tim Bradley and as just a two-man team. Mostly, I know Mark Kriegel kind of comes in and out and plays multiple roles, but I'm starting to really like the Osuna Bradley pairing. I think it's allowing Bradley to step out and shine more. And he can be missed to some people, but I think he's one of the best in this game, no question. And he really learned from his time with both Teddy Atlas and Andre Ward. And yeah, he makes large claims or claims that piss people off, but I think the broadcast team plays a lot into this question of who do you think puts on the best show? I mean, it's entertainment at the end of the day. I want to give that respect to Top Rank. I can't wait to see where they go. I think their deal is up with ESPN in August. There's just as many rumors that they would stay as there is that they would go to other big networks or streaming houses. And what about the idea of people teaming up these days? You know, are you with Turkey or you're against them? We're going to find out a lot that's going to change the core of what this question is. No disrespect though, Eddie Hearn and you know on DAZN with Matchroom Sport is really starting to build that consistency and is really starting to get prospects that aren't just UK guys, right? But like a good mix of this continued US invasion for Eddie that never really landed with a splat, maybe like he thought or hoped, but he's been the face of DAZN more or less since that launch. You know, I mean, Canelo was as a singular entity and AJ at times, but Hearn's been the endearing one. So obviously as a network, DAZN's had the best year. They have 2 and now 3 of the 5 promoters that matter after they signed Frank Warren away from ESPN Plus, from at least from a North American standpoint. And I like a lot of people on their broadcast. I think sometimes with DAZN, it's too long, too much time killed in between, and too many people on the broadcast. I don't need 4-man booths. I don't need a 4-man booth and then a side 2-person booth and then a 3-person backstage booth and then this. I mean, sometimes it can become a little bit of overkill. But the core of Grisham's theatrics or Mora's, you know, stubborn, sharp takes, I like that. But maybe, Oscar's been consistent, and that's what I'm looking for. So Oscar's had a great year. He's in this conversation. I think Top Rank, for what they've lost, man, they had a best year they could possibly have. So those are your, largely your players there that we're talking about. And I don't know if anybody had a runaway year this year like PBC had, but that's weird. It's like I could tell you just as much from an optimistic viewpoint that we're heading into unforeseen waters in boxing in 2025 and that everything's going to come together and we're going to see crazy fights because of Turkey and new alliances of people teaming up together, whether it's Dana and Turkey or promoters that are maybe not on the side of Turkey teaming up. I mean, there's a lot that could happen. There's also a lot of bad that could happen as this business and industry continues to change. But, there are two kinds of people in the fight game: extreme extreme cynics and sarcastic ways of looking at the negative and everything, or being like, try to aggressively choose to be the over the top optimistic that as bad as it is this year, next year will change and get better. And maybe that's because it was like that in boxing for the previous decade, from like 2010 to like the pandemic almost. It was almost every other year in terms of that. But I think we got to see what's going to happen. We got to see where these chess pieces go. Big things are coming, though. Get ready for February 22nd. Get ready for whatever this Dana thing is. We're going to see. I'm excited. We're going to find out. Let's see it. All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Let's keep this show rocking along. From G. Davis. I hope BC and Rafe will meet at a Detroit area Cracker Barrel for brunch after Thanksgiving. That would be the perfect setting for what Rafe and I deserve. You know what I mean? Rafe has a real endearing dirtbag quality to a guy that, was raised in Manhattan and went to Northwestern and, won a huge scholarship and did great work in the Philippines, and probably should be a hipster that I would want nothing to do with. Yet is salt of the earth factory town. I can smell the dirtbag on you. So Spider-Man meme, me and Rafe, where do we belong? Yeah, probably at a Midwestern Cracker Barrel eating roast beef sandwiches for brunch after Thanksgiving. I mean, Cracker Barrel will kill you, will burn a hole through your insides fast, but they do understand comfort. All right. They do understand that no matter how old you are, that weird game with the golf tees is going to entertain me for at least 30 minutes. Like, they get me, to a certain degree, even though I really tried not to eat there because of what it'll do to you. But yeah, I haven't seen Rafe in a long time. We got to reconnect. Rafe, let's get together. All right. We try sometimes. We went fishing together. We got our families together. That was great. But it's largely been this type of relationship. Like, I'm trying to, it keeps your organs intact at least. All right, let's keep it going here. From Jones Gareth 93. Gareth A. Joneses. Hey, BC, love the show. Obviously, the McGregor stuff is horrible. You're right. You're right about that, Jonesy. And it's disgusting what Conor has done. But how come we all seem to love Tyson, who was convicted in a criminal court? It's a great question. It's interesting how we do, whether we're talking about pro sports or rock and roll or Hollywood or whatever, entertainment circles that we tend to care a lot about these entities as people and feel like in some ways we know them or what have you. You get attached. Why? I mean, it's kind of the same question of why are we like, when we look at what GSP did to winning the middleweight title against Bisping and then kind of screwing over Dana and UFC in the original best laid plans and just walking off, somehow we go, man, that was smart. That was a good business move, or that was, nice job, GSP. But then when Jones does it, we're like, what the hell, man? Duck, this is the worst. I mean, you can add on, Jones has a much different track record with the general public, so that dictates that. Is it similar here? I don't know. Tyson is just so freaking unique. Nobody's going to do those numbers that he did on Netflix, right? But him, even though Jake played a big role and was the promoter and really did a nice job marketing it. For everything, for all the issues I have with the entertainment product and maybe to some degree how they've dealt with the fallout. Although, look, there was aggressive fixed chance, so they did have to some degree, put out that fire. But whether it was fixed or whether it was aggressive mercy shown by Jake or whether that fight never should have happened or what have you, they promoted the hell out of it. And they played in on this whole thing about Mike, that as worse as he can be, we find a way to love him through it. Some of that is Mike and his personality. The real The real hook to Mike's personality is that for somebody who comes across as such an impulsive animal and monster with a face tattoo and a reputation of having gone to, jail for rape and all of that, he's always so honest and self-introspective. And it's not enough to just exonerate him from past major missteps, but he's been such a gripping reality TV character, again, before that genre even existed, because he wears his sins and his triumphs and his everything so openly on his sleeve, so honestly. He's the first to put himself down. He spent decades telling us, I know, everything I accomplished in boxing was a joke. It has no meaning. It has no value. I was just this, I was just that. Like, he wasn't the one hyping himself up in everything he accomplished. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just people also kind of feel bad for how he was handled. Did Mike do a lot of shit of his own? Yes. Before he ever got into boxing, he had one of the worst upbringings imaginable, being raised by a drug addicted mother and a father that wasn't there, and in the gross projects, and was breaking the law from the very beginning. But do we look at him being chewed up and spit out by the celebrity machine so aggressively as we're watching the characters in play that he would have needed to survive and keep that up, from Customato to Jimmy Jacobs, the manager, to Kevin Rooney, the trainer, just get systematically picked from his life, either through death or through Don King edging them out? That when you look at what Don King did to him, both in the 80s and the 90s, and exploiting him and taking so much money, you look at what Robin Givens did, and that, obviously failed marriage, but from the Barbara Walters interview back then, which led to Tyson's suicide attempt when he tried to drive his car through a tree. I mean, maybe we look back at, to some degree, as saying, like, I don't know, as holding some level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, grace for what a crazy life this guy has lived, and that he's still standing. And maybe it helped that he's turned himself into such sort of a lovable character ever since that role in The Hangover that really seemed to turn it, and did the Broadway one-man show and was very, again, open and honest about his life and his missteps. He became, he was a monster at such various points. I mean, do not forget how much the bite fight with Holyfield just put him in like crazy villain forever mode, crazy man mode. And when his boxing career did fall apart, that next 10 years, he was a mess. It's incredible just to begin with that he could be praised and loved upon now. But I think we look back and we say he could have been the greatest of all time. I mean, he really could. He had the foundation to have been something insane, one of the greatest heavyweights we'd ever seen. I know people sort of falsely put him in that, when in reality he's not even in the top 10. He had 3 sort of incredible years at the top and was never really able to recapture that, despite coming out of jail and winning back a world title, which is not nothing. But you go through McNeely, Bruno the second time, and then a Bruce Seldon who like literally just dove to the ground. It wasn't prime Tyson. He had the opportunity to become something we'd never seen before, and didn't, in some ways, for things that were out of his control or were done to him. So maybe to some degree, people have this weird sort of sense of like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's a protection factor. I don't know if McGregor has that same personality to recapture us in that same way. Obviously, right now the wound is fresh from what he seems to have just, been caught doing. Although obviously I don't overlook that there's, it wasn't a perfect case. There isn't an argument on the other side, and to some degree of missteps or inconsistencies. But I also don't believe this is the only thing McGregor's done that he's been accused of, right? Like it's hard, He would need to show us a second chapter personally that was anything but who he is now. I mean, Tyson became a valued family man to a large degree. I mean, he's also somebody who for long stretches, every time you see him publicly, he's as high as possible, and it almost looks, in a vegetable state a lot of the times. But there was a redemptive arc in this stupid fight with the stupid outcome for Tyson in a way that I can't imagine for McGregor right now. But dude, do we love, first of all, nobody loves second chances or more than the American sporting public. And no sport is even close to combat sports, in my opinion, on how quickly we do just erase people's negative, almost again as if we are understanding to the plight of what so many fighters, come from and what they've gone through to get to where they are, where it's almost, I don't know, do you expect crazy behavior or unruly behavior? To some degree, possibly, but it's a great question. It's just McGregor's wound is fresh, and he's been on a down run for a while now in terms of the court of public opinion and what we see and the things he's being accused of. Redemptive arcs are possible though for the special ones, and I think there is. I mean, look, McGregor did that babyface thing for the Cowboy fight in 2020. And it was right after the initial allegations came out regarding this case. And yes, it was very much a PR, scam or setup, even though I'm sure at that time Conor was trying to clean back up his life and get back in as a father and husband again. But what I'm trying to say is we embraced the hell out of that at that time. It was refreshing. It was like this, wild man, crazy man, trash talker was suddenly navigating, dealing with, this second chapter in his career and not being immortal. And I don't know. We have this ability to forgive and buy back into the athletes in combat sports and care and excuse in ways that we don't do in other team sports at all. It's part of what makes this so weird and special, this combat sports addiction we all have. It's something. I can't always explain it. Sometimes it is explainable as, well, one guy's a white guy, one guy's a black guy. You do the math, but that's also lazy at the same time, And in this case, it doesn't apply in this one either. It's just sort of like, I don't know. Sometimes you just have so much exposure with one entity and you're cheering for them to pull it back together. And when they show you signs of life that they are, it's like you're along with them on that journey. It's weird. Idolizing on this is weird too. I mean, the celebrity culture we live in today is weird. Everything's weird. You know what I mean? Is this hat weird? It might be, but I like it. I think it's bringing out, it's bringing out some happiness in me. Okay, let's keep it going. I want to hear from Jones Gareth 93. Yeah, it's the same question we just read. There we go, BC. Thank you. Okay, appreciate that question. Let's keep it going. Let's get in from Alan W. Thank you, brother. Thanksgiving, the day we overthink gluttony. My Thanksgiving looks like the episode of The Bear, Feast of Seven Fishes, and I'm the smart ass starting fights. So I didn't watch The Bear. I watched the first episode with my wife, and she wasn't into it. It was one of those where I said, okay, I'll get back to this, and I never did. Alan W., you're telling me I need to, not just so I can fully understand this fantastic joke, but really just get to the next level of my entertainment journey. I'll consider it. But well played, just the same. I'll get back to you when I understand the reference. Thank you very much. All right, let's hear from Dave, our guy. All right, that's not Dave Sandine, is it? Probably not. All right. Oh, you're feeling thankful. Thank him. Appreciate you. Yeah, we already hit this one too. Okay, I gotta figure out how to work this better. Thank you. Let's see what else we can produce now. Let's go over to Little Penny. Is Pacquiao Juan Manuel Marquez 4, 2012? That's it, man. That's the one. The Hagler Hearns of the 2010s. Damn, that's a great question, Little Penny. Where do you rank Pac versus Marquez 4 in the best pound for pound fights of all time in terms of quality and entertainment? All right, Penny. This fight, which let's never forget that we didn't want it. We didn't need it. We'd seen 3 fights between these two. It felt like Top Rank, just going back to the cash register one more time with the big names. We're like, it's going to be the same thing, right? Marquez is going to fight very well. Pacquiao will surge late. He'll get a decision like in the third fight that most of the people didn't agree with, and we'll all carry on that Marquez just either got robbed or can't get over the hump against this guy, that he's cursed. But they were both still in the top 3 pound for pound. there 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 hadn't been a resolution fully to their rivalry up to that point, because even though Pacquiao was 2-0-1, again, there was a lot of people who felt that Marquez could have gotten the win in either, if not all three of those first fights. But I guess we just weren't prepared that the age would catch up with them perfectly. The old fire between them would get ignited so early, not just with the early knockdown that Manny suffered. We hadn't seen Manny get knocked down in a long time before that. So when he felt that, when we saw that, when he got up, it was on. And while this fight is always obviously remembered for the dramatically violent way in which it ended and what it did to this great rivalry, which I think is the best rivalry of the modern era, I mean, do I like the Pacquiao Marquez rivalry even more than the Gotti Ward one? Even though Gotti Ward 1 is probably my favorite fight of all time. Yeah, this is my rivalry. This is the one I'm going to tell the grandkids about. And we didn't even want the fourth one. And the fourth one's the best, not just because of that one moment, but because of that early knockdown setting a tone that Pacquiao is just like, F it. I'm going to go through you. We're going to end this rivalry. All right. Enough of this. Right. Like Marquez was the only one that could have dealt with that earlier Pacquiao the way he did, to take the storm, right? He got knocked down 3 times in round 1 of their first fight, to just, brush that storm off, punch with him, time him, be that badass that he is. I mean, Pacquiao gets hurt. That becomes just a sustained war. And Marquez's nose is crushed. I mean, it looked like one more punch away, he's going to get finished. And then he finishes Manny as brutally as possible with a 55-second gap from him falling right in front of Mitt Romney ringside to them inevitably bringing him back to consciousness with smelling salts. And during that 55 seconds, the cameras are showing Jinky, his wife, crying on the ring apron as Bob Arum holds her and helps her into the ring. I'm doing a live blog for ESPN.com. My jaw is on the floor. I didn't even type anything for like 3 minutes. It was like, what did I just see? But it came at the tail end of a fight that was already trending to be a legendary classic and a fight of the year contender. So where do I rank this fight? What do I think of this fight? I think this is the best fight this great sport of boxing has produced since 2005's Corrales-Castillo 1. That's incredibly high praise, because Corrales-Castillo 1, people were somewhat hesitant at the time, although some were willing to say it. It might actually be the best fight of all time. And when it happened, people were like, okay, that's great, but I'm not really sure necessarily if it's better than like Ali Frazier 3, or really, name whatever classic, whether you're going way back or whether you're going Arguello Pryor 1, or, I mean, there's so many to pick from. Gotti Ward 1, so many to pick from. But this fight is on that level of Gotti Ward 1 and Corrales-Castillo 1, in my opinion. The star power, the circumstances, titles at stake, even though they're older, they're still 2 and 3 pound for pound, where they were in their rivalry, the violence of that fourth fight where they both kind of just threw the game plans out the window and had a grudge match. Just basically were like, you know what? F you. Let's close this thing out. And then it's like that knockout left more questions than answers. Like, I thought we got to kind of see a fifth fight. And to Marquez's credit, and don't forget, Marquez would love to do those post-fight interviews in the locker room naked with just a sombrero over his cojones, which is hilarious. As hilarious as Marquez never, ever, ever believing that he lost a fight in his career. Only he's not in on the joke, chill son style. He just doesn't ever believe. But his way of just shutting that rivalry down and saying, I got screwed all those times, but now I took it out of the judge's hands and we'll never fight again. And I won the war. He lost almost all the battles, but he won the war. That's some great stuff. I mean, I love the Morales versus Pacquiao trilogy so much. And obviously I love Vasquez Marquez trilogy so much, Barrera Morales trilogy so much. But there's something about this Pacquiao Marquez rivalry, the all-time great class of the two fighters, the way that they contrasted themselves style-wise so perfectly, the heart shown by both, the stubbornness of Marquez, the toughness. I mean, that second, for years, I thought that part 2 in this series was really the best fight of it, which really came down to one punch. It came down to that one sort of sneaky, tight counter shot that Manny dropped Marquez with right around round 3, I think. I mean, it was really that close throughout that rivalry. The fact that Marquez could get knocked down 3 times in round 1 of their first fight and Joe Cortez not stop it, and then people thinking he had a case for winning that fight on the cards. It took one of the judges' scoring error, unfortunately, but not giving credit for all 3 knockdowns, only 2 of them. But still, yeah, for the fights that I consider in this pantheon, or the ones that I love the most, it's going to be Gotti Ward 1, it's going to be Corrales Castillo 1, and it's going to be this one. And I love to shout out the fights since this one in 2012 that have come close or given me similar feels in some level. I certainly put Nonito Donaire versus Naoya Inoue 1 in the finals of the World Boxing Super Series in that realm, in that sort of a step down, but peaking toward that. And, we've seen some great ones, but I don't know if we've seen one since Pacquiao Marquez that was as great of it. And like I said, it's the best fight we've seen since Corrales Castillo 1, which might be the best fight ever. So I had a friend in town, a dad of kids that my kids go to high school with, and I know him forever, but shout out to Mark, and he was texting me looking for fights to watch, and he said, when he runs on the treadmill, he watches these fights. He's got a list that he's going through to kind of get educated on some great fights. And I was like, okay, you got to watch the Pacquiao Marquez rivalry. And he watched it for the first time, fight by fight, not knowing what was coming next. And we would, talk in between, and I'd try not to give away spoilers, though, while still hyping up hey, just want to let you know, if you thought those first 3 were great, you're about to see the best of the 4 coming up. I couldn't even imagine. Could you imagine getting that opportunity to see a piece of art you love, a movie, an album, here just back for the first time again? Chase that dragon, right? Get back there for that original pure feeling. I couldn't imagine watching Pacquiao Marquez 1 through 4 for the first time again. I mean, these are just epic. This is why we watch this game. And please don't ever sleep on how necessary it is for you, if you haven't, to watch the entire Pacquiao Morales trilogy from start to finish. Pacquiao really gave us some incredible moments, incredible rivalries. So the key question you're asking there is Pac Marquez for the Hagler Hearns of the 2010s? Yes. It's a great comparison. It's not as crazy as that three rounds of fury and hell and war. That was not going to be sustainable. I mean, you know what I mean? From Hearns not being able to take that punishment to the hands of both were getting torn up in that one, because it was just a pure war. I think the closest we've come to that, it just didn't sustain, was don't sleep on Pacquiao Cotto. What a fight that was. That was a Cotto who still had something left in that jug. And it would go on to become a Pacquiao at stoppage, I believe, in the 12th round. But, that was 2 fights. Rounds 5 through 12 was a one-sided beatdown of the prime Manny, of the same version of Manny that did what he did to Ricky Hatton, or did what he did to Oscar De La Hoya. This is the same version. This is the very peak core of the very best of Manny Pacquiao. And good Lord, that performance is just incredible for the first 4 rounds. Obviously, in totality, Pacquiao wins that fight running away. But what he had to get through in the first 4 rounds of Pacquiao Cotto are Hagler Hearns of the welterweight division. That's insane how great those 4 rounds were. Man, he got beat up in those 4 rounds. Don't forget, he had the karaoke live concert afterwards, in which he had to wear like a head bandage, and because his hair was all mangled. I mean, Cotto brought the left hook from hell to that fight. He wasn't the same Cotto as, post Margarito. He's not the same guy, but look, we got to give Miguel Cotto credit for his multiple reinventions, not just the reinvention at 54 with Pedro Diaz, where he became as slick and a defensive boxer that we've ever seen. And then obviously the middleweight reinvention with Freddie Roach, where he just leaned in on the power and the explosiveness and the experience. And I mean, fighting at, Canelo weight at times, but also, going in there and doing big things to big people at middleweight. I mean, I still can't believe, even with the knee problem, what he did to Sergio Martinez. And that's why I always argue with Rafe that yes, Sergio should not have been in that fight. And yes, the knee was not responding, Campione. But it was a left hook from hell from Cotto in round one, an equilibrium shot that really put old Sergio on skates. But taking us back to Pacquiao Cotto, that's the one that gives you those Hagler Hearn vibes. It's just that Cotto couldn't keep up that pace when he finally started getting knocked down. I mean, that is such a mint version of an offensive machine that Pacquiao was at that weight. The tropical storm. He was unpredictable and just, I mean, who, like, to this day, who does 5 and 6 punch combinations followed by 5 and 6 punch combinations? Insane. Absolutely insane. All right, let's keep the flow going there. Alan W, appreciate you. By all accounts, with purchase of Ring Magazine, I took Turkey. You take it that Turkey's in for the long run. Think about what they did with golf. Now, I don't know all, I know like the bullet points with golf. I don't know all of the specifics on the pluses and minuses and wins and losses for them. But you make a good point, Alan. The purchase of Ring Magazine is not just to fund and bring back up to its former glory, not just the website, which has been, strong at times in recent years, but bringing back from the dead the print magazine. The bigger importance here, outside of creating a journalism home for boxing that's powerful and well funded, is what it might mean for the rankings, obviously. And if they are going to even go the effort of flipping off the sanctioning bodies and saying we're going to have the official Ring Magazine champion for each division, that's going to be the only champion that matters in Riyadh and beyond, which we've been waiting for somebody to do for a long time. See, there's still some tricks in the Turkey playbook that will win over the most ardent anti, blood money in the sand opinions. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I get that there's a certain amount of people that just never want to cross that line and allow Saudi here, but they're already here. All right, they're already here. If they can eliminate that issue, it'll create other issues of its own. Nothing will ever be perfect. No one gets into boxing to actually fix it and save it. It's all self-interest and selfish, purposes. It's capitalism, baby. I mean, it is. And it's the cantina of the, it's that part of the galaxy of where we are in the sports realm. But the idea that you're arguing that this could mean that he is in for a long run, okay, maybe that is something there. Maybe this is something they're really trying to build. If this partnership is Turkey and Dana, they're going to see if that can work. They're going to see how, it's going to be interesting to see how long they would commit to that, because Dana's talking aggressive again after, I think, a few weeks where he wasn't talking about this topic. Maybe they were deep in negotiation, or a key part of the negotiation at that point. But now you're hearing Dana say more to the idea that the only way boxing is going to work is if you tear it down, to the roots and rebuild it, and, and making the comparisons often to what he was part of with Zuffa and what they did to the UFC. The sport of boxing, luckily, isn't in the place that the sport of MMA was at the time, which made all of that possible, right? But to what they can control, maybe Dana's speaking to things exactly like this, because you could tear down those walls, Mr. Gorbachev, of all the BS over the last 20, 30 years, in some of those pillars of BS that have fueled a lot of the unsavory parts of this boxing industry that we deal with, the greed of the sanctioning bodies. If those pillars go away, that is kind of the definition of maybe what Dana's trying to say. So you're right. We do have to see where, because, you don't get the feeling that Dana's going to stay in boxing unless it's with Turkey. Like, he's only going to be in this, and TKO would only be in this if they can take this to the top and really try to have a major stake. They're trying the same thing on grappling right now aggressively. And you've heard Dana say in interviews that they want TKO to be the combat sports home and to have their hands everywhere. It's a very smart business plan. So maybe this does mean, I hope Turkey's around. I want to see great fights. I want to see great fights. There's a price to pay with that. How much we're going to have to pay? How much more we have to pay? No, for right now, for right now, I'm still leaning on I want to see great fights. So let's see what this Turkey can do during Turkey week here. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, who's this fella? Thank you for sliding in. Michael Carson. Appreciate you there, brother. Love MK, he says, but also love seeing you and Luke have your individual channels. Yeah, it's definitely an aggressive acquired taste, just like Paul McCartney's solo career to some degree. You know, you're missing Lennon, right? You're missing that Luke Thomas with you. Since you come off as polar opposites on MK, Michael asks, what's been your favorite thing about working with Luke? Happy Thanksgiving, BC. That's a wholesome question right there. Because look, Luke and I can be, as you know, at times in any marriage or partnership, especially one like this that's built around kind of the structure of pissing each other off and challenging each other, is you could grow to dislike them, you know, almost as much or even more than you like them. You know, luckily for Luke, we're still standing and we've been, I think, good partners through this, despite ups and downs that come with any partnership. But I do have to say, like, if my goal in life in general is to sort of have some meaning to what I do, like have a mission statement hidden in there. You know what I mean? Like, so what? I'm just talking about boxing and cashing checks for a living. No, I want to hope that to some degree I could, you know, change the world around me or add something to it just by being me. I think that's a big part of what I do love and get out of this solo channel sort of, you know, relaunch or whatever, what have you. And I hope that, you know, Luke would say that he's grown in good ways from me being around. And I think the same has happened from the great qualities of Luke to me. You know, I think I've learned a lot in some key parts of life and growth in some areas maybe that I needed, you know, to mature. And I think that's always important if you can get that from a friendship or a partnership, and that they make you re-examine your own situation in some categories or your old thoughts of thinking and look at it through a different lens. So I respect in a lot of ways, you know, the man that Luke is, and I appreciate that in our relationship. For sure. We are. It's weird. It's like, yeah, we're polar opposites in key areas, but in other structural ways we're kind of in lockstep. You know, it's kind of like that's what a great marriage is. Like not every, you know, romantic marriage is just full on. It's the way you complement each other, and it's how you know, form as a team, particularly when times get hard, and they will. And Luke and I aren't perfect, but we've gotten this far. And I certainly think that you know, he's a great dad who puts his family, puts his wife and child first. You know, that's a lot of it for me. You know what I mean? Like you want to be partnered with somebody that you truly respect in that regard. And you know, and I do for sure. So I certainly respect Luke and his challenges and battles, just like I hope he respects mine, you know? And that's life for you. But I appreciate you, Michael. Thank you so much. Uh let's see how many more we got of these. Two Chang sliding in. Yeah, man. Think Rogan will have Vladimir Klitschko on. I'm interested to see, even though I'm not following this, you know, crazy aggressively. And shout out to you, Two Chang, Two Chang's the South Oregon bird himself. But it seemed like a lot of people were framing Vlad's aggressive response as him actively trying to get on the show. And it seems like he is actively getting on trying to get on the show, but it seems for the right reasons of sort of, I guess, representing Ukraine. But then you see Joe come out and say, look, I wasn't necessarily meaning what, you know, the Ukraine response was trying to frame. I can understand why they would frame it that way and believe that it wasn't the perfect reaction that fully explained what Joe was trying to say. But also kind of like, who cares at the same time. But I think it would be an interesting chat, and I think there would be a lot of eyeballs on it. So I hope he does. I think Joe would be open to it. He seemed to be open just as much to having Trump as he was the other side in that election, and it seemed like they were less willing on the other side to sort of make that work on those same even playing field. So I respected that part of Joe. You know, you can't put all your, for as much as Dana wants to say that, like, you know, the local news is dead and journalism's dead, and, you know, Joe Rogan is your spirit guide from here on out. You know, he's not always going to get it right under any circumstance. I mean, he's a comedian, right? There's about 1,000 of them out there in the world. But I'd like to hear that. I'd like to hear them talk boxing, by the way, if that was going to be part of some 4 hour extended chat. But I'd also like to hear them dig into this a little bit. I'd be very entertained. It's up to Joe, I guess, in that regard. I think it would make sense in a lot of ways, unless there's some reverse politically minded thing I'm not thinking of. But I don't really care anyway. All right, there you go. Thanks. Yeah, we're back. All right. Alan sliding back. Appreciate you, brother. Jay Leno got the case of the olds. Give him a break. I mean, if it's just that, I get it, but it's suspicious unless he's just like one of these superhuman multimillionaires who like still, shops at Walmart and still is just like living, the most simplistic life too at the same time. Then would I understand him staying at a cheesy hotel 40 minutes away from where he's doing the show? Or is this just like Poontang gone wrong? Is this a booty call for Jay and we're trying to cover it up? I don't know. It could really just be an old man with a great car collection who keeps accidentally hurting himself like old people do. But there was like a weird funk around this. Am I making that up? I don't know, Alan. It was weird. I hope he's all right. All right. I was never a big Jay guy. I'm a Dave Letterman guy. That's my guy, right? But you can't argue with Jay's success, I guess. Just the same. Rank these classics, says Alan W. Oh my God. Oh, Alan, this is not wholesome. This is not good content right here. Maybe the third one would be the best, but that's about it. I'm just kidding. That's just we gotta get that off the screen. Thank you so much. All right. I mean, what are we trying to do here? Okay, what are we doing? Wow, Alan W. Always seriously the MVP of this chat. Appreciate you so much. For the Popeyes Cajun deep fried turkey fund for Mikey. Yeah, well, yeah. I'm down with that just the same as well. I'm sure Mikey would too. So thank you so much, Alan. Oh yeah, man. All right. All right. Alan says Warren Buffett drives a 2000s Cadillac CTS and eats McDonald's breakfast and coffee every day. He has 150 billion. Leno is just, I mean, that might be it, Alan. And that's probably the smart, you probably get to that point and it's probably the smartest way to live. I mean, I wouldn't stress that from Walmart. I'm not even sure I'd eat McDonald's breakfast every day, but whatever is your fancy in that regard. I love the Cadillac CTS, by the way. That is actually, it's oddly enough, that is my dream car. In a lot of ways, I love seeing ones still on the road that are in perfect prime old person condition. I can be waiting, once they don't need it anymore to take it over. That's the kind of car I want to drive. My wife makes fun of me every time I say that. Yet I'm in an orange Subaru Crosstrek. I love it though. What are we going to do? It's great. But yeah, this, the more successful you are, probably the more you begin to realize what really matters in life and the simplicities there. I'm sure everybody's going to have that window though, where they're going to buy ridiculous things, right? You just can't then get like put on civil trials. You can't, you gotta hold it together there. I mean, what is Dee doing? What is Dee doing with that editorial she put out there? Good Lord. I mean, I get that you one thing to back your man, but the glass houses and stuff like that. I mean, come on, like, wow. Right. Wow. All right. Okay. Alan shit. Yeah, okay. Alan, I'll give it. All right. I'll go for it. I'll give that a chance. I'll give that a real chance right there. All right. Let's see what else we got. Let's see what else is going on here. This one's from Ben Badge. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much. Why is boxing more popular than kickboxing? A lot of it is the history. Look, there's a simplicity with boxing. And it's kind of what I love about boxing because the structure of it is simplistic, especially if you come from MMA to then try to get into boxing. It's sort of really, oddly simplistic and specific, But obviously, when you get hooked on boxing and you begin to really understand it, the sweet science, and it's a constant chess match within a chess match without question. But it's easy to understand. It's easy to watch. Kickboxing is certainly as exciting as hell. And I don't really know why it never really, I mean, there were times, I mean, remember those times in the early 2000s when you can come home from the bar and put on ESPN2 and there'd be like Lon McCarran calling some badass kickboxing tournaments. You know what I mean? Like just with the stars involved. And I mean, it was great. And what was that 80s movie, Say Anything? I mean, kickboxing, the sport of the future, right? It's a great movie to watch on a plane, by the way, oddly enough. But boxing's got the history, the romanticism. I mean, think of how many films there are directly related to boxing about boxing. So I get what you're saying, though. Kickboxing in itself, especially at the highest level, is exciting as heck, and it is. I am shocked at times that it hasn't really had its full crossover U.S. moment where it's become, even for a short run, like a household thing, a regular thing. I don't know. I don't really know, but I do know that there is a simple appeal to boxing that really combines the combination of skill science with just violence and personality that, you know, maybe kickboxing has never had or hasn't had the platform to have it. So it's interesting. There you go. All right, Two Changs is back here. If Cotto doesn't land low blows, does Zab win? That's a great question. I think, you know, Top Rank does a great job on social media of sharing, whether it's YouTube or Twitter, sharing classic fights or tying them to dates and holidays, you know, 25 years ago today. And it's like, oh, damn, I forgot how much I love that fight. Never sleep on how special that night was. Was that 2006 when Miguel Cotto and Zab Judah, two New Yorkers, fought in Madison Square Garden? And so that was a time when a cousin of mine, shout out to cousin Tim, had access to a private box for boxing matches at MSG and was like, yo, for big ones, you should come with me. And that was a, you know, 2005 was a pivotal year in my boxing fandom. And it didn't work. 2006, I think, was this fight. The dates, it just didn't work for me. I was supposed to try to go to this fight and I didn't. And what the people that went there said was that there's been special nights at the Garden in modern history, you know, 90s, 2000s, today, where the buildings just shook. And most of these are involving Miguel Cotto, by the way, and or Felix Trinidad, you know, the Puerto Rican connection with the fan base. You know, you can mention stuff like Trinidad Joppy in 2004, Trinidad Mayorga, but some people say, and I was there, by the way, for Cotto Margarito 2 in 2011, and that was a special night atmosphere-wise, but it was weird. It was almost like a party because from the beginning, Cotto was sort of in control of that fight. I know there are people out there that believe Margarito was coming on at the time of the stoppage, and it's funny to rewatch it under that guise. But Cotto came out to an early lead by boxing and sort of made that a fight he took from start to finish, and it was a celebration. But there was like a nastiness in the air for Cotto's Zab Judah. You know what I mean? Two New Yorkers, opposite fan bases, both guys really trying to prove something at that point. You can hear that crowd through the screen, almost like when you watch WrestleMania 1 over again. And even though it's real corny and carny compared to where wrestling became today or just a few years after that, you can't mistake the crowd in that main event match. I mean, it was real, damn it. And it was kind of real in the Garden for Cotto versus Zab. And that thickness of energy was the soundtrack, but it also manipulated in a lot of ways the action in the fight. And you're right, Two Changs, the big part of Cotto getting such a key win here, this was Cotto's rise to eventually getting to welterweight and becoming a true pay-per-view star, and the hope of you know, someone like Mayweather in a fight like that. And we eventually got that in 2012, but damn, looking back, do I wish we could have gotten Cotto Mayweather in 07 or 08, you know, obviously before the first Margarito fight, to have really seen. But that version of Cotto that was on that rise from 140 to 147 and had the breakthrough moments like the Shane Mosley fight that no one talks about it anymore at MSG in 07. That's just this modern classic. That was a special version of Cotto who got after it, who went after it with the left hook to the body and was aggressive. And, you know, I don't think everything in his personal life was fully kosher at that time. And the tenuous relationship with Uncle Evangelista as his coach, I think Uncle threw a brick through Cotto's car window at one point. I mean, you know, family matters, right? But that version of Cotto was so tough and fierce. And, you know, the thing about Zab is Zab could have been, and maybe even should have been, obviously much greater than he was. And he was pretty damn great at times, but he couldn't really hold together and keep that together. But he had some epic stands in key fights, particularly the Danny Garcia fight, which was later in his career. Like just some stubborn stands that he took to stay in those fights, to stay at that level. I thought this was one of those. And you're making an interesting point, how important were the multiple low blows by Cotto. They were massively important. They really were. I mean, they slowed Zab's momentum and hurt him badly. And, there was a cry at the time, should Cotto have been more policed and, punished for that at the time. I don't know. The thing about Zab is it's like the times he was sort of supposed to do it or could go, he would kind of come up empty in the biggest possible moment. So it's like, did I believe he was going to get the edge here? Cotto did have a knack for pulling out close decisions, for rallying. I mean, the Mosley fight, it was actually Mosley that rallied late, but it was Cotto that came away with the win. Same thing in Cotto versus Joshua Clottey, also at MSG, and also a very exciting fight that very much could have gone Clottey's way, but Cotto got the nod. I don't know if Zab will take it home, but it would have been a different fight, seemingly altogether, because Zab at that point, and we saw it around this time, right? The 2006 loss to Floyd Mayweather. I mean, he still had it in pockets at a truly elite level. I mean, it's one of the joys of going back over Floyd's catalog and revisiting the classic moments and, being in awe. Really, I think Floyd is only going to age. The more that the narrative of the selective matchmaking, which at times was true, but to Floyd's credit, he did fill out the board in the end. I think that's going to fade, and we're going to appreciate more and more and more how brilliant, how amazing he was. But the fact that version of Judah, coming off of the upset loss to Vladimir, could turn it back on for those first 4 rounds and be a threat to Floyd. I mean, he actually dropped him, and it wasn't called, but he dropped, the glove touched the canvas. That was something to see. I mean, the way that Zab could turn it on at that super elite level and take that stand. Always had sort of trouble, though, coming over the top and getting those breakthrough big wins at the moments he needed them. But good reference. It would have been different, but I still think Cotto would have won that. I don't know. It's crazy. He pulls him out. He has a way. The crowd is always behind him. It does sway to some degree. You can't overlook it. L&W, thank you, dude. Thank you. LT has toiletries as a sponsor. Long Island Luke has a rolling paper company. I think he does. Long Island Luke. Shout out to Nosita. He's got rolling paper sponsorships. When is BC getting a sponsor? Joe Rogan is still pushing AG1. Well, I still use what's left of AG1 because I was on the monthly plan, and then it just kind of started piling up, and then I canceled. And whatever. I mean, is it what it said it was? I still enjoyed it. I still liked it. I don't currently have a personal sponsor at this moment. There was a time I kind of did. You remember, like, before Manscaped really, really took over that market, there was Ballsy. Ballsy used to send me like a ridiculous amount of stuff. We sort of had a working relationship there. I enjoyed that era of my time. I would still wear the Ballsy hat if I hadn't worn it to a gross brown crisp. But no, I'm open. I'm open for personal sponsorships. I do like, by the way, that Christian DeGuerro just puts MK right on the dong when he fights amateur MMA. That is a tip of the cap to that fella for that. But no, I'd like to. Yeah, we'll see what should I get here? I mean, ideally a hot dog company would probably just make a lot of sense right over my history. But I'll push that product. I don't want anybody to become a Lord or a Laird. But, I'll push product for you. All right. Good stuff, Alan. I appreciate that. Let's go back to Ben. What do you got, Ben? Ben, thank you so much. What is the strategy behind this matchup for Garcia? This reeks of tune-up fight when he should be thrown to the wolves, right? Predict his next 2 opponents would love. Okay, so we're talking about Ryan Garcia, I believe here, Ben Badge, correct? What is the strategy behind this matchup for Garcia? Are you talking about the Anpo kickboxing fight? This reeks of a tune-up fight when he should be thrown to the wolves, right? Predict his next 2 opponents. Would love him versus Shakur and Lopez. If you're talking about Ryan Garcia, I think you are. What other Garcia would you be talking about? It would have to be. Okay. It's interesting. Like, what if this Anpo thing on December 30th happens? And what if Ryan takes it to him and doesn't take any damage? Ryan's already talking potentially about other exhibition opportunities, maybe in Dubai in January. He's also actively seeking to throw himself into the Jake Paul pool for a real fight. Wouldn't have to be an exhibition unless they did it before April when Ryan can get cleared for licensing again. But I really believe you're going to see him, whatever you think of this Onpo fight, and if it moves you or does anything for you, it could be an interesting attraction. I mean, going back and watching Onpo against Pacquiao, they only had a 3-round match, but that was interesting because Onpo was so much bigger than him and had better, as a kickboxer, had better sort of structural defense than I'm sure Manny assumed or any of us did. And by the end of that, it was an action fight. And by the end of it, it was Pacquiao was kind of getting lit up. So there was something interesting there. If we go 2-minute rounds here for Ryan Garcia, like just entertainment wise, action wise, there's something here. It's interesting. But I expect him after this to get back in the lane of what is the biggest fight that he can make now. I think that's not only the best part about Ryan. It's hard to defend Ryan. He's done a lot of tough stuff for the last year. But the best part of him on the areas outside of caring about him as a person that we should have as boxing fans is you got to love somebody. It's why Oscar should be still to this day beloved, even though he tests our patience. They're perfect together because he tests our patience all the time. But damn, those two have a spirit that is aligned. Let me challenge myself. Let me make Ryan has said, take him for his word, but he has said, I'll go to 54 and fight Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz. Like he seems to throw himself at big names and is willing to do it. I respect how he made the Tank fight. So I really think a fight with him and Teofimo is possible over the next year and would be phenomenal, would be an incredible build, just incredible. And I struggle to see where the fight would not live up to some level of explosiveness, odd theater, many number of things can happen. I think it might come down to like, if the Jake Paul thing has any chance of being real, that would sort of halt whatever plans he would have of getting back in line and seeking out these really huge fights. So if a Jake Paul fight isn't on the table for whatever reason, I still don't think you can look past the Haney rematch, with the Tank rematch being second on this list of maybe the most likely that would happen, because I think Ryan wants to go big. Look, one thing Ryan said, again, he says a lot of things, is that he's addicted to boxing. And you can see that in him. It's not when he says that, I think it's a combination of addiction to the spotlight, addiction to be challenged, to have to enter a training camp and give your all, because you're going to enter into a real fight in which you're going to have to, give all. There is part of that sort of valor to Garcia. And I think that he would want to be as busy as possible moving forward as a vehicle to try to help him mentally stay on course and try to keep this train going and not see it collapse for any number of reasons. So if it's not Jake Paul, if that's not realistic, or if it's just not time for that, there's no limit to the amount of fights he can get in terms of any name, because everybody knows what they get with him. And it seems he's willing to even move up and wait for the biggest one, and says I think he said basically over the interviews I saw from Tuesday that he's just as willing to cut down to 140 one more time for a huge fight as he is to go to 47 or 54 if whatever is the biggest money, whatever is the biggest offer. What if that became Tank Davis? What if the timing just worked perfectly there? That's interesting to think about, because Ryan is seemingly a better version of himself as a fighter than he was into that Tank fight. I mean, it's still wild, the performance he had against Haney. You have to take into account everything, but it's still wild that he did that Haney couldn't pick up the left hook, that Ryan could, he had to kind of contain the fact that he wasn't in amazingly great cardio shape, and yet he still balanced his gas tank and pulled that off, even though it's not a real win. I think this rematch with Tank would look different. You still have to love Tank on that one, but I think Ryan's willing to take that next just as much as he would Teofimo or Haney. So we got to wait and see. I think a wild card if he's looking to go a little softer but still cash in, what about Rolly? I mean, they've been beefing on and off forever. The problem is that Rolly, although he just had a win in his last fight, did not look great and was knocked out before that. So maybe now isn't the perfect time for that. And also, look, I believe Ryan when he says it. He wants to go as big as possible. He wants to be the center of attention. He wants to be scared enough to have to give the best training camp possible, and he wants to fight. And you accept with that all the other stuff that comes with him. It is a reality show at the same, maybe not perfectly comparable to Mike Tyson, but it's a reality show watching him and covering him and following him. But he also tries to make really exciting fights, and I hold that. I hold that true. All right. Couple more here. What else we got going on here? Joshua Woolridge, appreciate you, brother. Thank you for the loonies. How do you think Francis versus Rug would look? It would be awesome. It would be awesome. It would be just an insane fight between two behemoths. But Francis is way more skilled than him. So it's how long, because, Rug, Umar Khan. I mean, look, it was shocking what happened, but I do question a few things. How much the ring as opposed to the cage played a role in that. There's a few things there where it kind of was the right night, the right everything for Rug to get that. I mean, it wasn't the best version of Malakin either. Although eventually Malakin hit him with the kitchen sink and he didn't go away. So maybe I need to think about that first and foremost when trying to break down what him and Francis looks like. Because really my instinct is to say, look, Rug's going to take it on the chin, and he might take it on the chin a lot, but he seems to be a cyborg out there. But this is Francis. This is different. But if you don't finish him, I mean, he's a rough guy to linger because he can hold you down. He can do some sort of, barbaric raw things. And he showed in some levels that he had better overall technique and IQ than maybe we gave him credit or he hadn't yet to see or show. It still took, a ring and a bad night for Malakin in a lot of ways, but he got the win. You'd have to heavily favor Ngannou still. I mean, he just ripped and tore Fajeda in half. Rug has too many deficiencies. Francis is going to light him up. How long can he last? Francis will take care of it. He'll get you the 4th round finish. How about that? There you go. We solved it. Okay. Solved it. Happy Turkey Day tomorrow to Michael. Much love right back to you. All right. I do a lot. Thank you. I try. I mean, I'm trying hard. Okay. Thank you so much. A few more from these fantastic people here. Michael Carson, what odds are higher, you ever landing that rear naked choke on Luke Thomas or Jones fighting Aspinall? Look, I have to pleasantly say, don't forget that last week I said I believe there's a 55% chance this fight happens. I said that on MK. Dude, I have this itch on my nose. I know it makes it look like I'm going in, like I'm going in deep. I'm not. It's right here. It's just dry. Sorry, I've been in a plane a lot. I've been flying a lot lately. I think my optimism has only increased these sort of rumblings you hear from that both camps are in deep talks right now. I think the UFC is either going to come up with the money, knowing that this is the one to come up with the money for, or maybe it's a Turkey fight that happens in Riyadh for all we know. But I feel like they're going to get it done. So I don't think I'm going to need to put that choke in. But, Luke thinks automatically without experience and likely poor technique and maybe a lack of strength that I wouldn't be able to keep that choke in, that I wouldn't be able to take him to the intersection of tap or nap, bitch. But I think I'd find a way to take him there, even if I had to drag him there, That's the thing. I won't wow you now, but when it's go time, what's that going to look like? You know what I mean? That's the question we all have as we look into this hat. You know what I mean? It's great. It's real great. It's real great. But thank you, Michael Carson, for being you. Okay. Great stuff tomorrow, today, whenever. There you go. Let's hear one more from Alan right here. Appreciate you, buddy. Castillo Casamayor, Castillo Freitas was an underrated dude. You nailed it right there. So Corrales, Castillo, Casamayor, and Freitas. I mean, it wasn't quite Barrera, Morales, Pacquiao, and Juan Manuel Marquez, who were the 4 featherweights of the 2000s and made such I mean, that's the closest group that's come to the Four Kings. But this group you mentioned made really good fights together. Casamayor is I've campioned a few guys in person. And Casamayor was a no-brainer. That guy was he was the perfect Cuban fighter. He was, he was as slick as he had to be, but he had balls and he could fight. And he was also really smart. And that trilogy with Diego Corrales is that first fight. You remember that one when Corrales gets the bottom part of below his lip cut open. You can see into his orifice. And when he knows he's about to lose this fight because of the cut, he just starts brawling. That's a hellacious fight. That was one of the fights that really, because it was like the buzz from Ward Gotti 1 kind of pulled me out of a spot where I wasn't as hardcore at that moment in boxing. And it took a bit to get back on the full level, but a lot of ways, for some reason, that seeing that Corrales Casamayor first fight at the time that I did, I was like, I need more of that. And it was Corrales in the battle shorts, the camouflage. I mean, it's central casting. And their second and third fights were interesting. The third fight's interesting. They weren't all wars, they weren't all crazy, but this group made incredible fights together. There's no question about it. The two Castillo Corrales ones, Freitas, even though he had an unfortunate ending in a few big fights where he no-mossed himself to a certain degree, that dude was just a war. I mean, if you haven't listened to the 20 questions I did with Dan Rayfield, he had named one of his cats back then, famously Popo after Freitas. Hear Dan tell the story about going to the locker. What did he say? It was after the Corrales Freitas fight? I forgot which one he was referencing, but the story of being invited to Freitas's hotel room is epic. So check that out if you haven't. But yeah, great call on that. Alan W. exposing himself as a legitimate and a solid boxing fan. So appreciate, I love that. I love that so much. All right. What else we got here from Michael Carson? Thank you so much. Back again and less wholesome. We need a BC watch along to a ridiculous fight card like Rough and Rowdy Boxing or some other non-serious event. I fully agree. I know I keep saying that. I got to figure out. I got to step up my technological understanding, find that perfect time in the schedule, that gap or something like that can be done. And whether it's, Rafe together, watching some old fights or just tuning into some weird and alternative program. I'd love to do like a BKFC one time. That'd be pretty fun. Maybe bring on some of you guys. See, that's going to the next level. All right. Also, no one can show their pipe, please. All right. I mean, what are we doing here? But, once I figure out how to do that, Michael Carson, I'll be cooking with gas. All right. We're going to be going somewhere in this channel. Indeed. Steady as we go. Let me close out these paid questions. I appreciate all of you so much. Yeah, Reggie really didn't. He really didn't keep up his end of the bargain today. But he does what he does. That's the saying around the house. 9:15 a.m. Appreciate you. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Glad that I was able to catch this live. Yeah, every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate those who take part in the ways that you do, or those that catch this later. I'm a big podcast listening tour only when I'm grocery shopping. That's my moment there. So if you're grocery shopping right now and BC's deep in your ear hole, you're in an uncomfortable position. But thank you so much. All right. Alan W. always has my back. Appreciate you. Why are we not talking more about Martin Bacoli? Great question. He has that young Foreman BDE. That's the thing. That was such a breakthrough performance against Jared Big Baby Anderson at a time where we really didn't know the full truth about either guy, to be fair. We really didn't know what to expect from that fight. And to see, I don't think that breaks Big Baby Jared Anderson, but I also caution where we were in headspace coming in there. Like, Jared had been criticized in fights before that for, not just missteps outside the ring, but some of the comments about how much he doesn't like boxing and how this is just a business for him to make money for his family. And he sees himself retiring in a year. People don't love hearing stuff like that. So, but if he's a dog, if he's a warrior, and I think he is, and he fought like a man in this one against Bacoli, he should figure it out and be able to come back. And, and if he is the real, he will figure it out. But that was such a oddly perfectly timed special fight. It was such a moment of truth for both fighters. And to your point about Piccoli, whether you want to make the young Foreman or the Sonny Liston reference, and don't forget young Foreman idolized Sonny Liston. It's of that same ilk. Is he that guy all the time, though? I mean, obviously, there's other tape of previous fights, I think across a couple divisions that we can see of him. But he came into full bloom as a heavyweight force in that fight and a destroyer and somebody with size, power, but also a backbone. Also some, I want to see him in a huge fight. And I see many names linked or rumored to be tied to him or around him. And I'd like to see where we end up with that. I'd like to see him get a big opportunity. I mean, could you imagine Dubois against him for the title? See, as much as it's ridiculous that we don't have a undisputed champion right now, when we all watched what Usyk did to Fury earlier this year and are very, very excited to see it again, it's not that I want to take a step back and have that fourth belt floated in, but the fact that Dubois has it and that he went through Joshua to defend it, and now, this Parker fight is coming at the right time, it does keep the division flowing and going. It's not like we want one face, one name, one champion every division. But this is also kind of fun. I'd love to see Dubois, if he gets by Parker, have to go through Piccoli. Then we're going to see, man. I think Piccoli could have some special fights for as long as he can keep up this very peak version of himself. Because if that's who he really is, what he did there to Anderson, he's going to be a problem for people in this division. Because if you don't take care of him, if you don't overwhelm him with speed and control him as a boxer, he will be there. He will make his presence known. These are the best type of guys to watch to cause havoc in divisions. And that's the truth, Alan Dubs. And you know that, Yeah, there we go. All right. This is Devin Tuck. Appreciate you, bro. Okay. I'm from Naugatuck. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. What's the drunkest drugged up you've been on TG? Oh, Thanksgiving. Yeah, I've been really, really, really in it. That's seriously, there's been unfortunately a lot of hungover Thanksgivings, or times you wake up Thanksgiving morning and go throw up on your way to the pregame before the game, right? You know what I mean? Are you really a Valley dirtbag if you're not bringing a fifth of something with you into a high school football game on Thanksgiving morning? I don't know. But yeah, it's always Wednesday night. It's always Valley New Year. That's when it was time to go hard in the paint, especially in those initial post-college mid-20s years before it became, I don't want to be in these places anymore. Back then when you did, but you wanted to see everybody. I mean, it was a reunion. It was like a high school reunion. Wednesday nights before Thanksgiving. I mean, if you're still living that life, get after it, right? Do it safely though, but please. But yeah, I mean, I've had some long ones, some long nights. Those Wednesday nights go deep into Thursday morning. Some of the best times we've ever had though, but the details, we're gonna have to get to another threshold first. Then I'll tell the story about Luke shitting his pants again or something like that. All right. Two Changs. I think we got a few more we're gonna run through right here. Rank these classic Christmas movies. Trading Places, which is weird because it is a Christmas movie, but I would never name it as one. It's weird, right? Scrooged, Stalag 17. I've not seen that one. Oh, I've not seen Monsters Ball either. So I'm not going to be able to do this for you. You know what I mean? I'm going to go Trading Places 1 and Scrooged. And I respect Scrooged, but I mean, my family doesn't respect my Christmas movie opinions. You know what I'm saying? Like they want Elf and everybody does, and that's great. But they're watching Hallmark movies. I'm like, come on. It's the same movie every time. Please stop. And I try to get them onto my yearly tradition of Holiday in Handcuffs, which I think is just a great holiday tradition, for AC Slater and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. There's some good one-liners in that one, but they tend to think that's a ridiculous offering. I didn't hate that Rock movie. What was that, Red One or whatever the heck they called it? It was pretty good. I feel like they kind of missed something, though. I feel like they were, and the Rock's production company put that movie together. It's almost unnecessarily like devilish and like supernatural and kind of where it's like if they would have toned some of that down, and it's because one of the villains is the Christmas witch or what have you, but it went aggressive in that lane. I think if they would have toned that down, this could have been like the family action classic that you watch for for a generation. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but like it was a decent in theater action movie that pulled on familiar tropes of Star Wars or typical action movies and mixed it in with their new sort of vision for a Christmas, a new Christmas, a new way of looking at Santa. I mean, am I really going this deep on a movie with The Rock? I guess I am, but I thought I would hate it, and it was pretty good. But I think they could have made something. They just missed making something that could have been lasting. And I do support the Arnold Christmas movie with the toy that he's trying to get and Sinbad's the mailman. You know what I'm talking about. My kids hate that movie. They won't make that part of our tradition, but I stand by Arnold in that movie. Jingle all the way. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Alan, one more time here. Who has a better left hook, Ryan Garcia or Oscar De La Hoya? That's a fantastic question. Ryan's is more explosive. You got to give him that. It is. I mean, I cannot believe Devin Haney, who from a defense technique standpoint, I respected as much as any elite fighter in the game coming into that fight earlier this year. I cannot believe I still cannot believe that he could not close that gap, that he could not time it and figure out how to avoid it. It is explosive. And maybe that's the difference between, okay, who Ryan has become over the last year is a wild and crazy roller coaster ride. It's not a healthy run to be living like that. And we saw why, right? We've seen a lot of craziness come out of that, unfortunately. But the confidence he fought with against Haney, I don't see. He didn't used to fight like that. Yeah, he got wins. He had the requisite wins on the way up, and obviously the Luke Campbell win was everything in sort of establishing him as somebody who could get up off the deck and still finish and all of that. But even back then, I don't know. I didn't see this. Maybe it was the fact that he had that amateur rivalry with Haney and knew and was confident and had sparred him before and knew that he could get that shot off. But like, you didn't see that, even though he was over aggressive against Tank to a reckless point. There was a way he held it together against Haney that I'd never expected. I didn't think he was that fighter. If he's that fighter again with that left hook, he's dangerous. That's probably a more explosive left hook than as perfect a left hook as the one Oscar had. Oscar's was more versatile, consistent, efficient, everything. And it's not like it wasn't a knockout punch just the same. I mean, he didn't have a lot of one punch KOs with that left hook, but that left hook was the punch that broke the dam in so many huge fights, particularly the way he broke down and finished Fernando Vargas, right? And particularly how he rallied to knock down Ike Corte in round 12 to put a bow on what was maybe to this day my favorite win Oscar had. But Ryan's left hook, I used to call Danny Garcia's left hook in his 140 prime like a finishing move, a secret weapon, and I could see his opponents when I would bring that up like get mad. I mean, Lamont Pearson was like, "You think I'm afraid of a punch that I know he's going to throw every time? Like, what are you talking about?" But like, I looked at that as the way that Danny Garcia used to, throw that fake to the body and come over the top with that left hook. People could not pick up the timing on that, and it was so heavy that look what he did to Morales, Salka with it. I mean, that punch was ridiculous. This weapon from Ryan is even more dangerous. It just changes the tone of in terms of the fight on a dime. And I think it's a punch that can knock out a good amount of people too. So it's fun. It's going to be fun to see how good Ryan can actually get before it all catches up with him. And when I say it all catches up with him, it could either be him imploding due to himself or there's gaps in his skills in terms of the full polish for sure. He's not a technical wizard. When will that catch up with him? Will it have to be due to aging or if he takes a few losses? I don't know. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I also know he's still got a chance to show us like a real prime run. It's going to be fun to see. No question about that. It's just hard to get over some of the ridiculousness that comes with that. You know what I'm saying? All right. A few more here. Alan says, you asked LT this, if you have FU money, 25 million in the bank, what would you do for work or passion? I'd work first and foremost. I'd work in my passion. I work in my passion right now. It's not that I have to remind myself of that often, but it's the greatest joy and gift. And those who can get to a point in their life where they can figure that out and then can have the the balls or the means or the opportunity to work in their passion and go after it, I mean, there's nothing like it. So I'd still be doing that. I'd be investing in my passions, no question about it. I don't know. I'm wired that way. I love to work. A lot of us are like that, but I want to bring value. I want to add something to my time and my day. I don't think money would change that, but I don't know. I've always been weird with money where I don't like covet it and chase it and, play lottery tickets or have this belief that if I could just snap my fingers and go that way and be taken care of, would I be fulfilled? I always assume there's a price that comes with that to some degree that I don't know if I would want to handle, but maybe it's different if I earned it, if I built my own kingdom, if I, if all of my goals came true and I reached the peak of my profession, which is my goal, at all times, maybe it would feel different. I mean, money does bring freedom and opportunity. There's no question about it. I've just been almost overly fixated on not fixating on it. And, it can be hard to, but you gotta make decisions, for it, but not fueled by it all the time. But yeah, if I had FU money, I wouldn't be dressed in like Walmart, but I'd still be out there working. I love it. I love to get after it. I'm not good sitting around. All right. That's what fuels sometimes when I'm in between roles or gigs or, opportunities, you can get antsy. It can build the foundation for a rough patch. So, but you gotta play the game. You gotta stay the course. You gotta keep fighting. That's what it is. Okay. Every day you got to make that choice. I'm going to keep getting up. All right. I'm going to keep getting after it. That's it. All right. Maybe we got a couple more. Ben Badge, thank you so much. Does circling away lose fights? Bivol, for example. Look, some fighters have built styles around that and won, but you've got to convincingly win. I think circling away, look, yes, there's an overemphasis in boxing, in judging, especially when there's really close rounds like Beterbiev, Bivol won, where when you're trying to break that tie in your mind, it is easier at times to just benefit the fighter who's coming forward, the fighter who's initiating the fight, the fighter who's setting the terms, the fighter who is bringing the fight to the other person, the fighter who inevitably, if you do that, will throw more punches and probably have a better chance at landing more punches. Obviously, you can win a fight defensively or from a counter punching standpoint or using some levels of movement away short of running, effectively. There's fighters, like I said, that they build. I mean, Floyd really was such a master at mixing both at the same time. The ability to always be, an extra half step away from his opponent's punches, but then at the same time, not afraid to step in and let his offense go for very educated key stretches in and out. I mean, God, I'm telling you, I mean, it is really enjoyable to rewatch Floyd's classics one after another, even the ones that he's winning 12-0, even these irredeemable fights like the Baltimore win, just to appreciate every inch, every ounce of that craft. But if you're in a really close fight, like the first fight there with Bivol and Beterbiev, and it's action oriented and you're giving too much of that symbol of this is how I'm operating, yeah, I think naturally you're going to lose close debates in that regard. More often than not, judges prefer the more aggressive fighter who's bringing the fight. They've proven that time and time again. So you've got to make that adjustment. But we got to give them credit. Like, fighters say this. They say when they're in the midst of a fight, for the most part, it's hard for them to really understand like scoring or to really know that they're ahead because it's a constant flowing battle. So it's kind of hard when with the structure of the rounds and we're self-scoring and then we can criticize after and say, man, they really should have stepped on the gas, late down the stretch. It is hard to have a full understanding, obviously. Doesn't mean I want to see open scoring. Doesn't mean I don't want to go that way. There's something about the romanticism of the reveal that I still want to protect, for better or for worse, often very, very worse. All right. Alan W. Die Hard is the best Christmas movie, sir. Meow. So my kids really want to watch it. It's just slipped through the cracks. We never watched it. So this is the Christmas season. I'm going to watch it with them for the first time. And because, they're at that age where all of their friends are saying Die Hard's the best Christmas movie. And if I mean, it is a good argument to make. It really is. It just doesn't, to me, it violates the central terms of a true Christmas movie in a lot of degrees, but it's still wonderful. It's still epic. I love the second and third too. There is something about those three. They just kind of work for me. I don't, there's not a lot of hate there. There's not a lot of like, I don't know if the first one always got its due. I don't know if as a collection it gets its due is what I'm really trying to say, LNW, you know? All right, bringing this to a fantastic close here. Thank you, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you for being you, for doing that, what you do, for joining me and listening to me ramble, for supporting me along this way in this journey. I mean, sometimes I'll get loose in the turn and I don't know where I am or what I'm talking about. And if you stayed with me through that, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's a half joke, but half serious there. Have a great Thanksgiving weekend, okay? This is the 10th Campbell's Rambles. We're building something here. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're making things happen. I appreciate oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Alan W. Thank you. Mikey's hell yeah. Mikey's gonna be all over that, no doubt about it. I was definitely, born a rambling man, trying to make a living, in fact, doing the best I can. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there, to two Changs. Be safe, folks, and really enjoy this time. Unplug, be with the family, protect it, all right? All right, let's go. Let's go. Protect it. Okay. We're going to get through this. It's been a tough month, but it's coming. Spring's coming. All right. Let's get some hope eternal. Swing big. Tip your waitresses. Take care of yourselves. Thank you so much. We're out of here. Yeah. Yeah.